I'd like to call the October 2019 Committee on Accreditation meeting to order. Will the secretary call the roll?
Jose Luis Alvarado, Cynthia Amos, Jomeline Belatayo, Kathy Gracia, Katrina Chikowski, Cheryl Forbes, Bob Fraley.
He's been waiting, so I think
Bob?
hopefully he'll. Bob, when you're on, can you please let us know?
Mike Hillis,
Sound.
Marty Martinez, Anna Moore,
Present.
Jerry Morrison, Iris Riggs. We have a quorum.
Texted me, so let me just tell him. Can you say?
So Co-Chair Fraley is joining us via phone today. As a reminder, this meeting is not being streamed live. However, staff has posted the link on the website so that any individual who would like to listen and watch the meeting live while the meeting is underway can do so. We know that we have some individuals watching or listening via technology in real time. We do have some different logistics for today's meeting. As you can see, COA Co-Chair Bob Fraley is joining us via telephone. Because we have one member participating via technology, this meeting is considered a teleconference by the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As a result, any action taken by the COA must be taken by roll call vote. For these items, we will be calling roll to record your votes. This is a very important reminder to please press the button on your microphone to activate it when you speak. It gives you a little green dot, green light when it's ready. If you do not do that, those listening on the Zoom will not be able to hear your comments and they will not be recorded. So please, even if you are making a brief comment, remember to push the button before you speak. We have our two newest members here in person today. We met them virtually in August, Dr. Michael Hillis and Dr. Martin Martinez. Welcome to both of you. Would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself to the committee in person? Member Martin? Martinez?
Sure. I'm Marty Martinez from the Sacramento County Office of Education. I'm a director in the School of Education. So we have multiple teacher prep, administrator prep programs. My primary responsibility there is leading the Principals Academy, which is beyond the credentialing aspect of the work through leadership development for current site principals, and then I work across all of our accredited programs. And then multiple other things like all of us have. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Member Hillis.
Hi, Mike Hillis. I do go by Mike. Usually if it's Michael, I'm in trouble with something. So I'm the Dean at the Graduate School of Education at Cal Lutheran University. I'm starting my 5th year. I'm a Washington State transplant and landed in California with the weather and asked myself, what have I been missing all my life? So I kind of oversee all the work of the Grad School of Education at Cal Lutheran. We have 3 departments and multiple credential programs, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Well, thank you and welcome. Mr. Member Fraley, are you there? There's Sarah. All right.
Bob, can you hear us? I don't know who's typing. That is so strange. Whoever is out in the internet world, if you could mute your computer so we don't hear you type. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 2, which is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the October 2019 meeting? Member Riggs, and a second. A second by Member Alvarado. Will the recording secretary, will the recording secretary call the roll vote? Please say aye or no.
Jomeline Belatayo, Mike Hillis, Marty Martinez, Cheryl Forbes, Bob Fraley, Anna Moore,
Aye.
Gerard Morrison, Iris Riggs, Jose Luis Alvarado, Kathy Gracia, Cynthia Amos.
Aye.
Motion carries. That takes us...
Wait, we missed somebody. Did you say we missed you?
Katrina Chikowski.
Okay. And I think for all the future votes, if you could turn on your mic so that we could just get it on the recording, that would be great.
Good suggestion. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes of the prior meeting. It would be appropriate for any committee member not in attendance at the meeting to abstain. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2019 meeting? Motion by Member Forbes, second by Balatayo. Any corrections or changes? Will the recording secretary call roll call vote? Please say aye or no. Remember to have your microphones on.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Cynthia Amos.
Abstain.
Jomeline Balatayo.
Aye.
Kathy Krisha.
Abstain.
Katrin Jakowski.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley. Mike Hillis.
Abstain.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Anna Moore.
Aye.
Barry Morrison.
Abstain.
Iris Riggs.
Abstain.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving right along to item 4, the co-chair and members' reports. Do any of the members have anything to report? Member Balatayo?
I'm presenting a research project at the National Association of Bilingual Education next on February, so I won't be here.
Great.
Thank you. That would be great.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Member Alvarado.
So just wanted to share about success we've had with a teacher pathway program we started in collaboration with, initially with one community college, Hartnell College, to essentially grow our own teachers. On trying to recruit teachers from out of the area or out of the country to tap into the existing talent pool. So it's a 2+2+1 program. Eventually it's going to be a 2+2 straight out integrated program. And so far we have close to 200 students now spanning 3 different community colleges using the exact same model. So far we've been running the program now for 4 years, and the graduation rates are almost twice as high as those that are on the campus-based program. So, and also the diversity is amazing. We have over 90% of our students are from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds.
Wow. That's great.
That's fantastic. And so the 2 is 2 community college, years of community college, 2 years of higher ed, and the credentialing program.
That's correct. 2 years community college, 2 years with us, but the students are seen as university students from day one.
Nice.
So when they are at the community college, they're engaged with our faculty, they're engaged with our recruiters, they're engaged with our advisors. I know most of the students in the pathway, and though they're not our students, we actually provide them with free computers.
Wow.
And so the university provides the computers while they're still in the community college phase of the program.
That's great.
That's wonderful.
And it's all through philanthropic gifts and donations.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
I like
That's
that.
exciting. Thank you. Anyone else with the member Chakowski?
It's like there's other people that we can't see. I like the superhero music when Jose Luis was talking about his item. Similar to what Member Alvarado reported, in our district, we are embarking on teacher residency.
So you can hear me?
And
Yes.
hi, Bob.
Oh, I hear the echo.
Bob, we can hear you now.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Well, and similarly, this is an
Can you
effort
hear me
to
now at all?
hear Bob. We're trying to hear Bob.
We hear you, Bob.
They can hear you. Can you still not hear them?
No, I can't.
It's a huge delay.
Yeah.
Weird.
All
So
in favor,
don't
say
unmute
aye.
yourself. We're going to mute you on our end.
Okay, and I'm on speakerphone, so I can always mute it from here too.
Tell him to. Please do.
Please mute, Bob. Okay. All right, except for Member Tukowski. Let's give it a go one more time. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll make my comment like super fast. So the primary benefit that I'm observing about residency as a means of building the teacher pipeline in my region is hugely improved articulation among the IHEs that prepare teachers to come into our school district. So I think this is a catalytic effort that is using residency to get all the people in my region to reconsider how to identify, recruit, diversify the teaching pool for the future. It's really encouraging and exciting. And I think it's well worth California's $75 million investment.
Terrific. Thank you. That's exciting news. Anybody else have something they'd like to share? All right. Okay. Thank you. Moving on, item 5 is staff reports, and the staff has a few items it would like to present. Ms. Hickey?
Sure. I think all of us are going to jump in a little bit, but first of all, it's nice meeting the new members, so welcome, and I'm looking forward to working with both of you. So we were just going to jump in. The staff has been extremely busy. Fall seems to be our busy season, just like it is for all of you at institutions. We've been at CCTE last week, which was very interesting. Great conference. Great speaker. I don't know if some of you want to talk about the speaker. I know Kathy Hurd and Iris. Really fantastic. I know is it Zanetta or Zaretta? Zaretta Hammond. She was fantastic. But I thought it was a very, very good meeting. But Terry met with the deans, and is going to report on that in a second. We have CCAC coming up, the credential analysts. They've moved their meeting to November now, so it spreads it out a little bit for us, which is nice. So we'll all be over there meeting with, I think, 900 credential analysts in a couple weeks. A couple of things that I wanted to just bring you up to date. So one of the things that was that the governor signed was AB 525, and that allows now an ed major for the PPS credentials and for ed specialists. So remember last year or the year before, they changed the law so that there could be an ed major for multiple subjects. So now they've added to that ed specialists and PPS, and that primarily helps out-of-state candidates. More, there is a Pell Grant issue related to an ed major in California. Don't ask me for the details on that. Your financial aid people would understand that better than me. But at the same time, that does help kind of bring down a barrier that has existed for many, many years. So that's kind of interesting. And then Terry, do you want to talk about assignment monitoring and maybe then the dean's meeting?
Yeah, so there was another bill that was signed, SB 1219, that is changing the assignment monitoring process, and we are on a little hiatus right now. It's going to take it from once every 4 years across the counties to an annual process. It's going to utilize technology, funny thing. The commission will get a data download from the Department of Ed. And all LEAs in the state in early October have to have what they call their census day, or it used to be called CBEDS Day a long time ago. And they submit data to the state as to what the classes are, which students are in what class, and who's teaching each class. That data, by being able to transfer it over to the commission and put it through a program that we've been building, we'll look at the credentials the teachers hold, and people who clearly hold the appropriate credential for the class they're teaching drop out as appropriately assigned. No problem at all. Everyone else then is in a bucket of possibly misassigned. And the reason it's only possibly is because it's also likely that it happens that people hold local assignment options by their school boards. So the district then has to be able to go in and say, yes, this teacher who's teaching that class, that's a local school board option. That's fine. And so they're going to get a time period to clean up this data set. And then they'll actually be on an annual basis the misassignments at the school districts, because the 4-year misassignment data has never been able to really be used because by the time you have the data, it's the past 4 years of school. And how do you fix the fact that teachers were misassigned for the last 4 years? This is still going to be after the school year that it takes place in, but by having annual reporting, it will become much more obvious if there are school districts that are really misassigning teachers in a somewhat more prevalent way than other school districts. So we are still building the system. We're going to pilot it this coming spring. There's actually no report this year. I believe a year from now is when we're actually going to do it for the first time. This also took care of the fact that in the Williams settlement, we had the lowest 3 deciles 1, 2, and 3 schools. Deciles don't exist anymore. Deciles went away over 5 years ago, but the Ed Code had still required us to use deciles. So our last assignment monitoring report still reported on deciles 1, 2, and 3 schools. Those schools were identified in 2012 as being in deciles 1, 2, and 3. Some of them were no longer down there. Other schools should have been there. So this bill finally got rid of that requirement that the commission monitored deciles 1, 2, and 3 on an annual basis, because the commission will be monitoring all schools on an annual basis. Also involved in that bill was the charter school issue and the charter school bill, and charter school teachers will need to hold the appropriate credential. The law had said they need to hold an equivalent credential, and different entities defined equivalent in different ways. Some people think a multiple subject teacher holds a multiple subject credential, and the equivalent credential is a multiple subject credential. Other people felt that equivalent to a multiple subject credential is any license from this building, such as an adult ed credential, a career technical education credential, a single subject credential, any credential. The charter schools are going to have until 2025 to come in compliance with that situation. By this coming July, they all have to hold a certificate of clearance. And that's what allows us to do background checks. It is also the identifier that goes in October that identifies who the teacher is. When individuals don't hold a certificate of clearance, the employer has been entering a 999 as their number. Well, when you end up with a number of thousands of classes taught by people who have 999s, you can't discriminate among any of them. You don't know who the 999s are. You don't know how many 999 people there are. So starting this next year, all teachers in charter schools have to hold a certificate of clearance, so they will have the SEED, which is the unique identifier. So that's really a step forward in the assignment monitoring process and trying to use technology in the way we can do these days. So we're excited about that. So the dean's meeting last week, 5 years ago, the segments came together and agreed that the Cal Council conference takes place twice a year, and that it was a great time the day before that conference to hold a dean's meeting. And so this was the 5th dean's meeting. They've been different topics over the years. This year was focused on early childhood education, and there were a number of speakers. One of them was Deborah Stipek from Stanford, who was the chair of the commission's panel that looked at the child development permit, looked at the 6 levels, and developed the guidelines for programs and the first set of performance expectations for early childhood education educators. Also was someone from UCLA, another Deborah Valentine, who is directing some centers down there, so really doing the work. Also, one of the governor's spokespeople who is focused in the early childhood area and knows where the governor's going, and this is a real interest to the governor. And Mary Sandy also spoke. And so the discussion really was, how do 4-year institutions integrate into the early childhood workforce preparation? And interesting data was shared. There's like 19 different college degrees that California institutions offer that address the concept of preparing someone in early childhood education. These different degrees are across like 9 different colleges or schools. They're often not in the College of Education. Different people at the meeting had very different responses. Some institutions, yes, we have these 5 different ways we interact with early childhood education. In fact, we have a 4-year degree in early childhood education, to all the way over to say, we actually offer no early childhood education at our institution at all. So it's a really broad range. The deans were asked to consider how should early childhood educators be prepared, and should there be an intersection with the College of Education, if the colleges of education are where we really understand how to prepare people to work with children. It makes some sense. So it was a really interesting Wednesday afternoon on that topic. Then we went into the conference, and I know I met with the CSU deans one morning. I met with the AICCU deans one evening. We had the conference itself. There was a PowerPoint at the conference, and I'm going to share briefly some of the details from that PowerPoint. But if you're interested in more details, if you go to the Council webpage, which is the ccte.org webpage, they have a policy page. If you just click on policy, you'll actually go directly to the PowerPoint I used. They posted it on their webpage. There's a number of different grant programs I want to just briefly tell you about. And if you want more details, go to that PowerPoint. A year ago at Cal Council, I talked about the community college pilot program where the legislature had a bill signed by the governor that said 3 community college or community college districts could work with 4-year institutions to pilot distance teacher preparation. And we said, but we don't really need to think about this because nobody funded it. This year's budget funded it. So now we have to think about it. And so the commission is currently working with the Community College Chancellor's Office. We're developing an RFP, which will go out sometime later this winter. And it would allow the 4-year institution must be a commission-approved entity to prepare educators. It must be physically in California. And it has to agree to work with a community college. The criteria for what would make a successful pilot here is that the community college is going to offer the coursework. Actually, the 4-year institution is who's offering the coursework, but it's offered through distance to the community college in an area that does not have access for the people who live there to go to a 4-year institution. So anyone in the LA area, I don't believe you're going to be applying for this grant because it's very crowded there. This sounds like something more like Northern California, the eastern side of California, Southern California over near the border. It sounds like an area that's not really very urban in many ways. The 4-year institution's faculty would be the instructors. There is $500,000 for each of the 3 grants, and because they have to develop the ability to offer distance education. And it is a pilot where we're looking at a little over a year for planning this and getting all the infrastructure in place, and then definitely a year of starting, and then the candidate fees are really supposed to keep the program going. So this is a pilot. It's the Community College Pilot Teacher Preparation Program. A second grant, it's EWIG, and I didn't write down what EWIG stands for, but it's on the Department of Ed webpage, and if you just search for EWIG, you will find it.
Workforce Investment Grant, but I don't know what the E
Education
Workforce.
I think it's Education Workforce Investment Grant. You're right. There's actually $37 million for this grant through 22-23, and only IHEs or nonprofit institutions can apply for the grant. The grant is to offer professional development and work with LEAs. There are 5 different areas, and there will be RFPs coming out. This actually was noticed in last week's e-news, if you got the e-news, because there was a survey the department wanted people to take. The 5 areas are computer science, professional learning, the EL roadmap, helping to implement it across the districts, special ed professional learning, the topic of school climate, including social emotional learning, restorative justice, and the 5th topic is ethnic studies, but that one has been put a little bit on hold because the thinking had been that the ethnic studies framework would be done. The ethnic studies framework has gone back for some retooling. So ethnic studies has a little longer timeline now. But the PowerPoint has actually deadline dates and things and a link to the webpage on this. So that's a big chunk of change. Then there's, because all things come back around. How many people remember CSLA in the past? Well, there's a 21st century CSLA now that's been funded in the budget. $13.8 million, and this is federal funding, and it's ongoing money, and it's to get contracts and develop a program of training for administrators, teacher leaders, coaches, things like that, and that's all identified in the PowerPoint also. The 4th grant is an exciting one, Golden State Teacher Grant. It is for $20,000 per teacher candidate to do their teacher preparation program. We are not administering that. The Student Aid Commission is administering it. They don't have the RFP or it's not an RFP. Candidates will apply directly to the Student Aid Commission is what we understand. And that will be up on their webpage in the near future. And when we know what the information is on their webpage, we'll put it out in our PSDE news. So you'll want to notify your candidates. A candidate is required to teach 4 years in a high need field and or high need school. The definition of high need field, we know it's bilingual, special ed, and math and science, but the department and the California Collaborative for Educator Excellence, the CCEE, it's a whole new state agency that started late in 2014 because, we need more state agencies in California to make education even more complex. It was actually developed because in the No Child Left Behind days, if you remember, the department became somewhat punitive to entities that were not making progress, and that was not seen as all that helpful. Well, the CCEE is a completely separate entity, except the superintendent of public instruction is on their board, as is a state board member on the CCE's board, but other people are on the board too. And they're there to provide technical assistance, guidance, and support to local education agencies. There's a web page for the CCEE, and you can actually ask one of their staff to come and speak with your group. Commissioner Alvarado.
So a question on the Golden State Teacher Grant. When it says for candidates in credential programs, is it specifically for post-bac programs or are they for integrated? And if it includes integrated, at what point in the integrated program can students access these grants?
That will all be on the CSAC webpage. I do have a meeting coming up with the people who are organizing this, and I'm going to write those questions down, and I'm going to ask them those exact questions. I do believe it should apply to people in integrated. I don't think that should be a problem. It is a total of $20,000 per candidate, and it is going to go directly to the candidate is my understanding, and if the candidate does not teach for the 4 years, then the candidate would have to pay back the funds. It's a quarter of the funds get credit for each year they teach, in essence. So as soon as we know more, it'll come out in the PSDE news, because CSAC is definitely doing that. Go ahead.
Just one more question about the community college teacher preparation. Are the funds going specifically to the community colleges because they're the sites where the distance content is going to be delivered, though the credential portion of it will be delivered by IHEs? Is that?
Yes, the funds are going to the community college, but a successful application will have a very clear partnership, including signatures, with the four-year institution. So the funds are going to have to be shared across the two institutions. And I'm assuming that probably materials are going to be purchased at each, because you can't have a distance learning process unless there's distance learning paraphernalia at both sides. But the funding does go to the community college because it is Prop 98 funding, and but they're going to have to work with their IHE partner.
Just one more quick follow-up. Distance education is broadly defined.
We're still trying to finalize the RFP. We're working collaboratively with the Chancellor's office, and it's hard enough to get one RFP done within one agency and when you're working across agencies. So it will go out. There will be a question and answer time period. And so, but we really encourage you, because part of the Central Coast of California does have this rural distance situation. Find your community college partners really quickly and start talking to them if you're interested. Two more very quick topics. Something that's coming forward to the commission in November, we've been talking about it for a couple years, but we've not made any really good progress, is the idea of how candidates would verify subject matter in the future. And we have one new idea. Currently, the law says either you pass an exam, you have to pass all parts of the exam, or you do a commission-approved program, you have to do the whole program. A year ago, we thought we were going to be able to propose a mix and match just through the regulatory process, where we were not able to do that because there's no legal authority to do a mix and match for the single subject candidate. So we're still moving forward on that, hopefully, but we're taking forward a legislative proposal. And the proposal to the commission is to ask if we could look for a sponsor to get a bill, similar to how we got the bill for the education major. That was a commission-sponsored bill to let special ed and PPS candidates have a major, and the commission said, yes, work with the legislature. So if the commission were to say yes in November, what we do is look for an author to get a bill that says, it's good. Keep the subject matter exam as an option. Keep the approved program as an option. But could we have another option? Because of candidates who don't necessarily decide by their junior year, they can't get an approved subject matter program done. Instead, What if we had something that's in the middle where we identify, here are the domains for this content area. We create a form. A candidate could take their transcript and the course of study that they completed. They would identify which course by number addresses each of the domains. They would have to get maybe a C or better in that course. And then they would be able to take that verification to their teacher prep program, who would look and say, okay, I'm seeing these courses. If some title and course numbers vary off, you might have to check the course syllabi to see, does that really work? But if they've addressed all the domains, their subject matter could be verified. Okay, well, a supplementary is not a prep program at all, and it's only something you can add on to a credential. This would allow for an initial credential for there to be an examination of the coursework. We've often had people say, well, why don't you just allow a degree? A degree is a really messy topic because even in the English world, you have degrees in English literature, British literature, you have degrees across the board, and defining which degree is acceptable and which degree is not acceptable could be a never-ending process. So then we said, well, instead of a degree, what if we actually looked at the course content, and if the course content addresses the domains of the SMRs, that would be acceptable. So that's our approach instead of going to a degree. If the legislature were to agree this is a good idea and we were able to get it through the legislature and the governor passed it, signed it, it could be in effect in early 2021, which would be a new option, which we think would be kind of interesting. We shared this with Cal Council last week. We said the March Cal Council meeting in Sacramento is a perfect time to have conversation, and if the entity as a whole supports this idea, to write a letter of support. What isn't all that helpful is just a letter of support. Oh, we need this. What would be really helpful is a careful analysis of why is this a good plan? Why is it educationally sound? Why should the legislators approve it? And so that's what we've talked about with the policy group at Cal Council a little bit. I see Kathy and then Iris.
So any IHE would be any IHE that has an approved teacher preparation program, or would this come out of the IHEs that already had the subject matter programs?
We were looking at it because the subject matter programs we don't have a lot of oversight over. It's actually the teacher preparation programs that are in the accreditation system. So we're thinking it would be the multiple, single, and special ed teacher preparation program institutions. And so they would have to, they might end up assessing a fee for this. I don't think it would have to be a huge fee because they would need to check that it clearly does address each of the domains before then they would sign a letter very similar to the subject matter waiver letter, but it's not a subject matter waiver. Instead, it is a course of study waiver or something.
My question relates to that also because it hasn't been typical for us to do the approval when we've done we don't have those content classes in the College of Education, and so our colleagues in the subject matter areas have always been the ones that dealt with subject matter. So this would be quite a change, at least from my own perspective, as to who approves that, and do we have the capability in the College of Ed to actually make a good, sound decision about those domains? And maybe we do, and we've just been selling ourselves short. I don't know, but that's not the way the university, at least, tends to work.
It does seem that if a university wanted to have a subject matter arts and science faculty member weigh in, that would definitely be allowable. The commission as an entity has no ability to control or regulate or say anything about people in the arts and sciences colleges because we interact and we approve the College of Education. So that's why we're hoping to situate it in the College of Education. But I think there could be a logic. It depends on the place. For example, I know at CSU Long Beach, their teacher preparation programs are highly integrated with the departments for each of those single subject areas. So they already have a relationship, and I think they would definitely work that way. If your College of Education is more distant and doesn't have that closer relationship, it might be for this process something where you would need to reach out to those other schools. Yes.
So I share the same concern in that sometimes there may be pockets of support, But the fact that, in speaking as a dean of education, relying on an undergraduate program run in a different college, run by a different dean with different faculty, that we have limited ability to exert any kind of authority for change. And so it really has been just relationship building, but it is challenging. And so that certainly adds a barrier, an additional element of complexity for sure.
In this case, we're looking at this, unlike the subject matter programs where you are trying to have some influence on them, you actually don't need to have any influence on any arts or science course. It is the candidate's responsibility to show they may be coming from out of state, from some other institution out of state. They have a transcript that they're going to provide to you. You have the ability, if you're not sure what this course is, because it's an unusual title for this field, the ability is to go out and look for that course syllabi for that course. You would actually just be saying, yes, you have a course that covers each of these, or we don't see any course that covers this domain. We can't sign this without a course covering that domain. And then the candidate could go and take a course that addresses that domain. So in this case, I think we're seeing that you would have less need to influence your colleagues in other schools. It would just be an option for candidates to have an additional pathway, especially those candidates who did not decide they wanted to be a teacher until at the very end of their college career, or maybe even after their college career. But it would say that this person did take lots of math. They have an engineering degree, but they took math, and the math courses they took cover all the domains. Right now, the only choices they have are either go back and take the CSET or go to a subject matter program and try to get an evaluation of their transcript. This would give that person a different option, is what we're thinking. So it's going forward to the commission as a legislative concept at the November meeting. Definitely talk with your ex officio members if you have concerns or have questions that you want to have raised about the topic. It's not even in a bill yet, so it's nowhere near fruition at this point in time.
So one final thought is that whoever's responsible for evaluating that's where the increased workload is going to take place. So currently, whoever's doing the evaluation for content matter expertise, that person then would have all of these additional people coming in and getting that reviewed.
Also, I actually appreciate that you put it in the colleges of ed. I think that's a good thing. I think we're just grappling with how does it get done and do we have the expertise to do it? And our colleagues who have been doing subject matter comparisons and equivalencies to the subject matter programs on our campus always talk about how difficult it actually is. So they're the people who have expertise in the courses that they're reviewing. And so I think it's not quite as easy as it might appear to do that. But I do think it's possible to develop that expertise in our colleges of ed. But it just will, it's just not looking at titles. You know, it's going to take some investigation into those courses. Otherwise, we could be accepting things that really don't meet the domains. That's the worry.
I know we're running short on time, so I'm just going to say, check the November agenda for the commission. There will be both the literacy TPE item coming back for possible adoption, as well as a discussion of assessment. How should, if it should be done, should the ability to teach reading be assessed? And I will close my part back to Cheryl.
That's okay. Hey, I would like to ask Miranda to come to the table for a second. So we're about to start, I wanted to report, we're about to start looking again at the bilingual standards. So Miranda's going to lead that work. And if you just want to mention a couple of things. And I also want to just let you know that for those of you who are new on the commission, on the COA, we had talked about initial program review and kind of streamlining and sort of guiding the field as to what to submit. So kind of mirroring our program review process where we say we need these pieces of information. And because right now the IPR process is very onerous on both us, the readers and institutions. And we're trying to find a way to streamline that but at the same time, these are new programs, so we need to be very diligent about what they're proposing. So we're continuing to work on that. And Miranda's been very instrumental on keeping us moving forward in that way. And it looks like what we'll do in that respect, and you can talk a little bit more about it, in January, we will be requiring certain pieces of evidence and being a little bit more prescriptive about what they have to submit for a new program proposal. So Miranda, bilingual and IPR.
Okay. So for the bilingual standards update, over the last year, we've had a subgroup looking at the current standards, trying to identify things that need to be updated or maybe removed from those standards. So we're working on putting out an application for a panel that should come out by the end of this month. And what they'll be doing is looking at the current standards, taking the work that the subgroup has done over the last year, looking at those and using their recommendations to make modifications to the current standards. And the work for that is planned to begin in the spring. And then talking about the IPR process, as Cheryl said, we've brought it to this committee a couple of times, and we've talked about streamlining kind of what's submitted and what reviewers are reviewing. We are moving towards a process that's similar to program review, so programs will know what they need to submit. Because we do get a lot of questions from new programs asking what should be submitted and how to submit it. So I think moving to this process, it's going to be very helpful for everyone. The programs proposing the program will still receive their feedback standard by standard. So it's not just looking at those pieces of evidence that they've submitted. So they'll still receive the detailed feedback and have a chance to respond until everything is aligned and ready to be recommended for approval here. We're hoping to launch all of that in January, as well as having everything be submitted electronically on a website similar how to we expect submissions for program review and common standards. That way it's just an easier task to navigate, and we're still not getting documents that are pages long, or in this case, since we're asking for specific pieces of evidence, that we're not getting, a zipped file with 20 different attachments. So we think that this process will be a lot more organized for everyone involved as well.
We're finalizing the application for the bilingual standards panel. So if you know anybody who might be good to serve on that panel, that'll probably be out in a couple of weeks. Bilingual. What did I say?
Just double checking.
Bilingual. Yes, that's what I meant. Bilingual. Yes, the bilingual standards panel. A couple of weeks, you'd say, Miranda? We're finalizing.
Yeah, we're meeting this week to, I think, finalize the application so we can get it sent out and start recruiting.
Great. So spread the word if you know anybody who would be good on that panel. I just wanted to report that, and you'll see it, that we had our second CAPE visit. We have a third coming up, and I'm not reporting on that visit. I'm just reporting on the process of working with CAPE. It's challenging, and I think what was good about the last visit is we had a vice president from it's the Council for the Education of Educator Preparation. It's the national accrediting body for educator preparation. CAPE is voluntary in California. In some states, it's not. It serves as the accrediting body for some states. But in California, it's voluntary, and we partner with them. So an institution that chooses to be CAPE accredited, we try to work to streamline the process so it's not so onerous on the institution. And the team works together as a joint team. We share information, share interviews, those kinds of things. But it really it's been challenging because the standards aren't as aligned as they used to be in the past, our standards and their processes are just different. So it's been good to go through two finally and to really get a sense for where are the glitches, where's the difficulty in working together. And so I have a really good sense now of where the challenges are. So the vice president of CAPE was on the last visit. Terry and I have a phone call with her on Monday. She has made herself available now. We're going to have a technical assistance meeting for any institution that wants to continue with CAPE. We're working with her on Monday to figure out how that will work so that she can kind of help walk through, answer lots of questions, kind of help really just smooth out the process a little bit. So look for that if your institution or if any institutions want to be CAPE accredited and are going through that process. There'll be some sort of technical assistance that we have yet to define yet in the next couple of months for any institution. So I think that will really help the process. And she has a good sense now too. So I'm really pleased at that. but it is challenging. And then I just wanted to mention we are started up our site visits. We have 3 under our belt and have a lot more coming up, another 30 this year. We are, it's crazy. We are also making some changes to our annual data system, and we have we were able to take a little money that we had this year and augment that work so that we get things from the system that were supposed to be done in phase 1 or that maybe we didn't get to or couldn't get to. And now we're able to, for instance, we really want the data to pre-populate for institutions so that institutions don't have to tell us 100 times what pathways they have. If they change, you can, delete those pathways or whatever. That was not, we hope that was in phase 1. It didn't get in phase 1. So now institutions are kind of like, oh, we have to do this again. So we are trying to get that in this next phase for institutions. And so we're making some changes and it's also helping us build the teams. We're trying to figure out, Aaron's been instrumental in this, trying to figure out how to build this system that helps us, streamline the team building process a little bit easier. Cause as we used to call it, the Jenga and the, what do we call it? Jenga and Match.com.
Jenga and Match.com. Yeah.
Process.
And I think a little bit of Twister.
A little bit, a lot of Twister. Aaron, do you want to talk about program review? Because we're well into that.
Yeah, I'll just keep it brief. As Cheryl mentioned, of course, we've had 3 site visits. 1 more starts next week, and then we have 1 more. I know I didn't want to call you out, but yeah. And then 1 more in December for this year, and then the majority of them, of course, will happen in the spring, as well as being in this academic year. Several of us have our brains, of course, in the following year for Red Cohort, which has 32 institutions in it right now with a total of about 145 programs. And we need 2 reviewers to review each one of those programs. So myself and Bob Locks and Cheyenne Jones have been working very hard to try to find a pair of reviewers to review each of those programs that share expertise, are both available for one of the 11 program review dates that we have scheduled, and hopefully one of those individuals is also available for the site visit, because we like, the plan is that we take a subset of the reviewers from program review and send them on the site visit. I will say that the wonderful part of this is that, as always, all of your colleagues and peers and all of the wonderful folks that we work with are really beating down our door to be part of this process, which is wonderful. And so for us, it's just a matter of, can we pair everybody? But everybody really wants to be a part of it, and that's fantastic. And that allows us to add folks to the BIR each year as well. So we had 3 two-day BIR sessions between August and October, and we trained up then a total of another 60 BIR members. So these people read program review last year, which was part 1 of the training. They came to part 2 in the last few months, and now those folks are fully trained, which means I can call on them just to jump in on a site visit if we have someone drop off, and that's happened as well already for this year. So we've had to replace some reviewers. So it's great. The field is wonderful. I'm very, very happy to work with all of them.
And then around special ed, we know that we have kind of talked about special ed quite a bit, and she's here if you need anything on special ed, but they are well into starting the TPA development work and being out in the field a lot, and then technical assistance work in and around the new standards. So lots of work in that area, and always busy. And then Jake working in the area of CTE with Bob Locks, who's not in the room, I don't think, at the moment, but CTE, and there's a work group that will be starting on that, right? The industry sector issue, you could probably say a little bit more about that if anybody's interested in the CTE work that Jake is doing. And then just lastly, just everybody's working really hard on these transitions. So we have the PPS technical assistance that will also be happening in the after the first of the year, that we're working on a plan for that. Those are new standards, you recall. And then all of that needs regulations. So we're working on the reg package for the special ed as well as the PPS. So staff is working very, very hard, which is why you don't have the full handbook in front of you today for the accreditation handbook. So, phew, that was a quite a report.
All right, thank you. That was fun. Are we ready for? Is the Sousa Pacific with us? Via technology.
Technology.
Yes, this is Mary Rawlings from Azusa Pacific, if you can hear me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
All right, so item 6 is the program approval recommendations, and this section is for action. Today, there is one institution with 2 new programs for approval. I want to remind everyone that in line with our new process, the institutional representatives have been invited to join us via technology to provide any information and to answer any questions we have about the proposed programs. Azusa Pacific University is looking for approval on pupil personnel services, school social work, and pupil personnel services, child welfare, and attendance. Are there any recusals on this item? So, as mentioned, join us via video technology to answer any questions you may have about this program proposal from Azusa Pacific University. I'd like to introduce Dr. Mary Rawlings, the Chair, Department of Social Work, and Rebecca Harris, Assistant Dean, School of Education. Would the representatives from Azusa Pacific University like to say something briefly to the committee about the proposed program?
Yes, thank you. This is Dr. Mary Rawlings. First, I just want to thank the Commission for their careful review of our program. We are very excited to be able to offer a school social work pupil personnel services credential along with the child welfare and attendance credential. Literally yesterday, I got another request from a school district seeking to partner with us and wanting school social workers and school social work interns. And we feel we're in a really great position to meet this need as we are, sorry, I'm being asked to start the video, sorry. As we are being, as we're situated between the program that's currently offered in San Diego along with the programs that are currently being offered in Los Angeles, but those programs really are on the west side of Los Angeles, and our program sort of sits on the cusp of San Bernardino and Los Angeles County, so we can really meet the need on those in between areas of those programs. So we're excited and looking forward to hopefully being able to offer this soon.
Terrific, thank you. Any members of the COA that would like to ask the institution any questions about this program proposal? It was a very thorough submission. I love our new process with all the links in there and seeing how it was reviewed by the team. It's very helpful. So this is an action item. Do I have a motion that we accept the recommendation? A motion by Member Alvarado, second by Balatayo. Will the recording secretary call roll vote? Please say aye or no, and make sure your speaker is on.
Jomeline Bilatayo.
Aye.
Mike Hillis.
Aye.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley. Anna Moore.
Aye.
Jerry Morrison.
Aye.
Iris Riggs.
Aye.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Kathy Gracia.
Aye.
Cynthia Amos.
Aye.
Katrina Chakowski.
Aye.
All right. Well, motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Rawlings and Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm just wondering if Bob can hear us. Bob? Because I don't know how to record your vote. You're technically as part of the member, so we need you to say aye or no, or abstain.
I did. Can you hear me at all? Hello?
Yes.
And now.
Yes.
Woo-hoo.
Yes. No, I did say aye. I can hear you guys. This is fine.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, now moving on to item 7 is the program change of status. This item is divided into 2 parts. Part 1 includes items for action by the COA, which include requests to withdraw, requests to reactivate inactive programs, and requests to add a new content area to an existing program. Part 2 provides information on programs that have transitioned to revised program standards and programs that have elected to change to inactive status. These items are for notification only and require no action by the COA. Do you want me to read all these that are on here? Okay. So you have the list before you. In Part 1, the program withdraws. I'll just name the institutions and not the programs. California State University, Los Angeles, Mount Diablo Unified School District, Orange County Department of Education, Pepperdine University, Sonoma State University, and University of California, Los Angeles. This section is for action. Are there any recusals? Mm-hmm. All right. Do I have a motion by committee member? I have a motion by member Martinez, second by member Forbes. Will the recording secretary call the roll call vote? Please say aye or no and make sure your microphones are on.
Jomeline Belatayo.
Aye.
Mike Hillis.
Aye.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley.
Aye.
Hannah Moore.
Aye.
Jerry Morrison.
Aye.
Iris Riggs.
Aye.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Kathy Crecia.
Aye.
Cynthia Almos.
Aye.
Katrina Chakowski.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Heide Rodriguez, the representative from the commission. Glad you could make it. We are on Part 1, Section B, which is program requesting reactivation, and there are no programs requesting reactivation at this time. Section C is adding a new content area, and we have 2 institutions requesting to add new content area to an existing program. William Jessup University would like to add the subject areas of agriculture, art, business, ELD, health science, home ec, industrial and technology education, music, physical education, science, social science, and world languages. University of Davis, California would like to add bilingual authorization Mandarin. This section is for action. Are there any recusals? All right. Do I have a motion to accept these recommendations? Motion by Alvarado, second by Belatayo. Will the recording secretary call the roll call vote? Please say aye or no and make sure your microphone is on.
Jomeline Belatayo.
Aye.
Mike Hillis.
Aye.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley.
Aye.
Hannah Moore.
Aye.
Jerry Morrison.
Aye.
Iris Riggs.
Aye.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Kathy Crecia.
Aye.
Cynthia Almos.
Aye.
Katrina Chakowski.
Aye.
Terrific. Motion carries. Thank you. The next 2 sections, D and E, are for notification purposes only. No action is needed. Section D is the programs transitioning, and there are no programs transitioning at this time. Section E, programs moving to inactive status, and there are no action is needed. And there are 2 program sponsors moving to inactive status, California Baptist University and University of Pacific. That takes us to item 8, which is the initial program approval for new program sponsors. At this time, there are no new program proposals by new program sponsors to be considered for approval. It is anticipated that there will be several scheduled at upcoming meetings. For our newest members, this item differs from the program approval item that is specific to those programs being proposed by institutions that have only recently been approved by the Commission as program sponsors. Okay. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Moving right along. Item 9 is the notification of institutions not in compliance with accreditation timelines. And I was so thrilled to see that there are no late items to report. I think that's a first. That was terrific. All right. Yeah. As the item says, there may be more to report at the next meeting because program review was just submitted last week and staff is still processing those submissions. So our 10 o'clock, we're almost there. Time certain, which is item 10, is the discussion of the final report from Fremont Union High School District to address stipulations. Consultant Jake Schuler will introduce this item. Joining him by video technology are institutional representatives Josh Mazel, Coordinator of Academic Interventions, and Tom Avakmovidis. Yes, Associate Superintendent, Teaching and Learning. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? Mr. Schuler, will you begin, please?
Yes, good morning. This item is a discussion of the one-year follow-up report for Fremont Union High School District. The Fremont Union site visit took place in February of 2018, and the COA assigned the status of accreditation with stipulations at the November 2018 COA meeting. At the May meeting, Fremont Union provided a follow-up report on the first stipulation and an update on progress toward other stipulations. Today's report is the one-year follow-up report to address all stipulations. So the first section of the required report focuses on how Fremont has continued to address induction preconditions 3 and 4, which were found to be out of compliance at the site visit. I'll review quickly what preconditions 3 and 4 are for induction programs. So precondition 3 is the requirement that candidates receive a minimum of 1 hour per week of support that is directly provided or coordinated by their induction mentor. Precondition 4 is the requirement that the development of goals for each individual candidate's ILP, their individual learning plan, which is the center of their induction experience, that takes place within 60 days from enrollment in the program. During the site visit, it became apparent to the review team, based on interviews with candidates and mentors, that there was not a system for monitoring the requirements of preconditions 3 and 4. In discussions with program leadership, it was confirmed that there was not a formal process in place to monitor these two requirements. So in order to address precondition 3, the district created a mentor log spreadsheet that documents each meeting with a basic description of activities and length of time for the meeting. The district also described a weekly monitoring process that ensures that program leadership can verify each candidate is receiving the required 1 hour of support per week. In their May report to the COA, Fremont leadership stated that they believe the new process has helped them better monitor who is getting their time and consider how to provide support to their diverse caseloads in a more equitable way. The one-year report for today confirms that these processes are still being followed and that district leadership is consistently monitoring. For precondition 4, the requirement that goals for each teacher be developed within 60 days of enrollment, the program has defined that date of enrollment and then also has developed a spreadsheet that tracks the date when mentors and induction candidates are meeting to develop these goals. The district has also described a process for the program director and leadership to monitor the dates to ensure that all candidates and mentors are meeting the deadline. The one-year report for today confirms that these processes are still being followed. They've also confirmed that for this school year, they've already met that 60-day requirement for each candidate. Okay, for stipulation 1B, the COA asked for a report on how the induction program is gathering and using induction-specific feedback in data. And this is data that's distinct from all new hires to the district. And also to how the program is gathering and using this induction-specific feedback and data from key stakeholders such as employers and community partners. Before and at the site visit, the team found evidence that the program regularly collects and analyzes a wide variety of internal data on candidate experience and preparation and makes appropriate program modifications. However, the team did not find evidence that this data includes regular feedback from key stakeholders such as employers or community partners on the quality of the preparation within the induction program as distinguished from all new hires. In their May report to the COA, Fremont explained how they were working to ensure that data from key stakeholders is focused on the induction program by engaging with employers and community members to analyze evidence of candidates' professional growth work rather than just survey results. Today's report again confirms that these meetings with internal and external stakeholders have taken place. The second stipulation addresses Common Standard 1. At the site visit, the team found no evidence that the education unit ensures that faculty and instructional personnel regularly and systematically collaborate with colleagues in the broader educational community outside of their district. In order to address this stipulation, the program was planning to work with a neighboring school district and to spend at least 1 to 2 days each year to participate in outside professional development opportunities that will allow them to collaborate in a broader community. Today's report confirms that they have held meetings with their neighboring school district and also attended professional development throughout the year. For the last stipulation, this relates to Common Standard 4, which is about continuous improvement. Fremont has updated their 5-year assessment cycle document to reflect the work that they have done over the past year to further engage with outside stakeholders and to focus on induction feedback. The report includes more specifics on lessons learned and ways that they have integrated these practices into their program. So in conclusion, staff has reviewed each part of the 1-year follow-up report and provided it in full for your review. And I'll now turn it over to Tom and Josh from Fremont to make any comments that they would like.
Hi, everybody. I'm Josh. This is Tom. Hello. We're happy to be here. I don't really have much to report. Our district is having slightly declining enrollment, so our induction numbers are a little bit smaller this year, which has actually been a nice way to start to integrate these changes. Our team is the same size. Our caseloads are a little bit smaller, which is just giving us all a little bit more bandwidth. So it's been a good year so far.
Terrific. Thank you. I'd like to invite the COA. Do you have any comments or questions? The report was well done, and I really appreciated the links. That evidence was like, okay, good, they are doing this. So I really appreciated that. So I think that's probably why we're all going, oh, yeah, it was a very good report, and led us to where we are now, which I'd like to, this is an action item. If someone would like to make a motion to accept the staff recommendation of accreditation with stipulations to accreditation. Member Morrison, second by Member Riggs. All those in favor? Oh, no, sorry. Will the recording secretary call the roll call vote? Please say aye or no and make sure your microphone is on.
Jomaline Belatayo.
Aye.
Mike Hillis.
Aye.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley.
Aye. Aye.
Anna Moore. Anna Moore. Jerry Morrison.
Aye.
Aye.
Iris Riggs.
Aye.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Kathy Gracia.
Aye.
Cynthia Amos.
Aye.
Katrina Chakowski.
Aye.
Motion carries, and congratulations to Fremont Union High School District.
Thank you.
Yay. Hey, Cheryl, would you come sit here for me? I need to recuse myself from this item. I know we didn't have a chance to ask you in advance, but since you've had experience at the table. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Oh, I was going to say, there is a script, right? Thank you. Keeps me going, keeps me awake. I didn't talk to you about this. All right, let me get my script. Okay. We ready? So item 11 is the discussion of the first and second quarterly reports from Sonoma County Office of Education. Consultant Dr. Sarah Solari Colombini will introduce this item. Joining her at the table are institutional representatives Jason Lee, Executive Director of the North Coast School of Education, and John Laughlin, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Does anyone else need to recuse themselves? Okay. Dr. Colombini, will you begin, please?
Certainly. Good morning. So this item provides information on the first and second quarterly report submitted by Sonoma County Office of Education, addressing the stipulations resulting from their March 2019 accreditation site visit. They were assigned accreditation with stipulations at that site visit. In addition to the quarterly reports, the COA also required a site visit, a revisit, for the following programs: designated subject CTE, teacher induction, and multiple and single subject intern program. So that revisit has been scheduled for February 2nd through the 5th of 2020. At this time, staff is not recommending any action. Instead, staff will continue to work with the institution to provide technical assistance and to review the remainder of the reports that will come in between now and the revisit. And then we'll report back to the commission one more time, actually 2 more times. You have 2 more meetings between now and the revisit, and then we'll come back to you after the revisit. So the stipulations for Sonoma County are listed on pages 1 and 2 of your item. Sonoma County Office of Education already demonstrated compliance with the preconditions when they came to the May 2019 COA meeting. And so those, the evidence also was submitted to the commission, and they continued to demonstrate compliance for those preconditions. The evidence submitted on page 3 of the item, beginning on page 3, demonstrated the actions that Sonoma has currently taken to address the rest of the stipulations. Where possible, the evidence that's within this document has specific dates as to when actions have occurred. So it's quite a comprehensive document. There are quite a few programs at this institution. So rather than go, I know my colleague just almost shamed me here, going one by one for that induction program. Sonoma runs quite a few programs, so I'm not going to go one by one. This is a comprehensive report in front of you, and I know that you've read it. So I do have both Jason Lee, the Executive Director, and the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, John Laughlin, here to answer any questions that you may have about the evidence that you see before you.
Thank you, Dr. Colombini. So we now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the report.
I appreciate. Let me move closer here so people can hear me. It was as far as those of you I remember from May. I wasn't even a year into my position as director. I'm a bit disheveled this morning. We have power outages in Sonoma County, wildfire in northern part of our county, and John and I just got next. Well, we live in the same neighborhood. Not too far from our home, there's another vegetation fire bursting out, so we can't catch a break over there in Sonoma County. But the timing of the accreditation visit was actually perfect for my transition into kind of leading this program, and it really provided me an opportunity to push staff in a direction to really evaluate what we're doing. And so in a strange way, I thank the visiting committee for coming in and really kind of shaking the cage a little bit. Rattling the cage allowed me to kind of really push people who've been in the institution for a long time doing things a certain way. And it's forced us to kind of really evaluate not just each individual program, but to kind of take with both pre-service teacher induction, pre-service admin, and admin induction, really kind of take a 30,000-foot view of what are some consistent things that we're going to do as a unit across all programs to ensure that we're really serving the districts in our county, 40 districts, plus Lake and Mendo and Santa Cruz. So it's been some great work. It's been some hard work, but it's been valuable, and it's kind of not only deepened my understanding of all the programs. I was kind of an admin-focused person, but it really has pushed me to learn about all of the programs, and we've made some considerable steps, but there is a lot of work that still needs to continue to make sure that we're meeting the expectations of the commission. So from my perspective as the executive director, it's been fantastic that this has happened because it's really pushed us as an organization to examine everything we're doing and really deepen kind of our understanding across all the programs. So I invite any questions you may have.
This is an information action item, so no action is required at this time unless the COA wishes to take action. Is there discussion or questions that people would like to ask? Member Alvarado?
So thank you so much for the work you've done to this point. If you could share with us what are some of the steps you've taken to support some of the programs, and that there was inconsistent support of remote programs. And so I'd like to hear some examples of what you're doing in that particular area.
So with our pre-service, which is our Santa Cruz satellite and our Mendocino Lake County satellite, we've been scheduling regular monthly meetings through Zoom, really working to make sure that they're getting all the resources. We've done a lot of on-site trainings in Santa Cruz, for example, to make sure that the mentors understand what's happening, the faculty of those are up to date and ready to, use Canvas, go over the curriculum. We've had 3 site visits in Santa Cruz, and in Lake and Mendo, the director from Lake and Mendo has come down, and we've done some practicum supervision training on site in Lake County and some mentor training on site in Lake County. And again, we have those monthly meetings with their kind of lead that's overseeing the program there. And it's really tightened things up. Both of those programs, Santa Cruz is looking to go towards Cal State Monterey Bay. And so we're working with them on that transition because I think it just makes sense to have a partner geographically located in your area. So I was excited to kind of hear about that. You'll see in the future, if you haven't already, that Lake County is submitting their own program. And that has presented some challenges for us because they're still under us and taking our materials and kind of changing in a way that we didn't necessarily see as compatible with what we want to do. So that really forced me as the director to have more hands-on conversations with the Lake County folks. But we've resolved that and we're moving forward. So it really has been much tighter communication and supervision of those satellite programs.
Member Riggs?
I greatly appreciate your comments and also reading the efforts that you've made. And I just would like your opinion, I guess, shared with us about change, because we always hear change is so difficult and takes so much time. And we always end up having this year-long deadline for institutions to meet all of these requirements. And there were a lot of requirements placed on your agency. So is that reasonable? Is it realistic for institutions in general to remedy things in that length of time, I guess is my question.
Sarah and I have actually had that exact conversation because we've kind of identified things, and it came out of, and I believe Director Riggs and I can't remember your name, just to her left. Oh yeah, in the white sweater mentioned. Yeah, that's you. Made comments at the May meeting saying that some of these things really are not a year-long timeline. I mean, when you're talking about continuous improvement across a unit and a theoretical framework that supports everything you do, that is a complicated task. And to have an expectation that that's finished by May 4th of 2020 may not be realistic and probably isn't realistic. So I think as we move forward, there'll be some timelines shared in our quarterly reports that outline that obviously some of the preconditions were easily remedied right away within the first 30 days. Others are going to take time. So we may come to the May meeting and say, here's 3 things that we're still working on and will continue to work on. And some of those items, when you're talking about looking at teacher performance expectations in faculty, in coursework and in field work, that should never end. I mean, that should be something that's continually evaluated. So to say that we may be in a place where we feel good that the systems we put in place are really evaluating that, but we may still have more work to do to implement some of these things. And that's just a realistic expectation that I've shared with staff and that Sarah and I have discussed.
Member Balatayo and then Member Chakowski.
Hi. So my question is, how will you purposely integrate your adopted theoretical framework across all programs?
What mentions in the report that, there is, to have one that touches everything that's kind of foundational in teaching and learning as opposed to administration is not realistic. So as it mentions, kind of each program is looking and is integrating their kind of own theoretical framework. But as a unit, we have adopted, and it really, sometimes timing is everything. And Mr. Laughlin can talk about what the county initiatives are around continuous improvement, but that's kind of our binding theoretical framework. And currently what we've done is we have identified mentors. That's something that goes across all programs. So we're really looking at kind of building out our own kind of mentor handbook that crosses all programs. And those are currently the ongoing discussions we're having that connect every program. So each program lead, and I should include this in the next, some of the graphics and processes we've created around that unit-wide look at mentoring and the roles of mentors, the expectations of mentors. And so you can see that's kind of what we're using to kind of go across all programs. And that's going to be our focus. And that, again, is going to take us time because our plan is to kind of create this mentor handbook that goes across across all programs so that mentors have a clear expectation, understanding of all of their responsibilities, because we may have folks that serve in multiple roles. I'm mentoring a teacher. I'm also mentoring an admin induction person as my desire to stay connected to the program. So those have different roles, and I should have clear understanding when I come into those roles of what the expectations and things are for the program. So right now that mentoring is what we're looking at across all of our programs to connect us in a theoretical framework.
Member Czerkowski.
Yeah, thank you for the update. It's super interesting to track progress, and I guess I'm also interested in your perspective of the role of the standards themselves, to which we all have to be aligned. How did you use those documents in collaboration with stakeholders to make the changes in your district, in your program, in your agency?
So we've been very explicit when we have, I've tried to be as transparent and humanly possible. So when we sit down with advisor groups and faculty and other people and say, here's the accreditation report, here's the actual standards verbatim of, what they're asking us to do. But beyond that, we're being very explicit with those standards. And that's kind of the starting point when we're having conversations, whether it's in our prelim or our teacher induction. And so we're using that as kind of the focal point. And as far as the work, and I've been kind of connected to this just because of my work with teachers as a mentor, the TPEs, for example. Somebody who's evaluated teacher, I was a site principal for 13 years and done a lot of evaluations, but just my own personal learning through this process around the TPEs with pre-service folks has kind of been like, oh, geez, I didn't realize it's much more. I forget how complicated teaching really is and what it really requires of us. And so we've been using the standards in all those areas as kind of the foundational starting point for discussions about why are we doing what we do. It's not enough anymore to say, oh, we're going to teach this class. What is the purpose of that class? What underlies that, and why? That has to be explicit for our faculty. It has to be explicit in what we talk to our teachers about, because it has to be relevant. Adult learning tells us that there has to be these connections made, and they have to be intentional. So we've really kind of moved that up.
Yeah, I thank you. And I think what you said about mentoring being the theme that runs through a lot of your programs really resonated with me, because that was one of the huge changes for the 2016 induction standards. It's about mentoring in the ILP and growth and choice. And so clearly that resonates in your comments. So I found it the same way. I had to resurrect an induction program that had been dormant for 5 years. And fortunately, I got to do that concurrent with the implementation of the new standards. So like you, I appreciated those. Thank you.
Member Martinez.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had a question. Throughout your document, you mentioned a lot about the continuous improvement framework and how that's integrated across all of your programs and through the unit. Can you talk just a little bit more about that and how it's created, hopefully, that seamless effect or throughout the programs?
So I mentioned timing earlier. Sonoma County Office of Education is a regional lead for continuous improvement work. I've had that advantage of being a part of that as a management member of SCO, not SCO-E. I don't know how you guys got that first, but good for you. But then as we've had multiple day trainings. This is actually our third one. Day 2 is today. I'm actually here, but the rest of my team is there. And so we've been working, the Sacramento County Office of Ed has a team there. Placer County, a lot of school districts have come to our area and are getting training. And so through that process is where we've really and the accreditation has helped, and that was where the timing is. We've needed some vehicle to intentionalize the work we were doing, and it happened to be that continuous improvement came in, and it's really allowed our team leads to meet at these multiple day trainings and really take this report with us and go, what is the work we're now going to do, and where are the commonalities, and how do we build systems in? So first we're looking at mentors, and perhaps we're looking at competency next as another using that continuous improvement model as a way to kind of always be cycling through that and looking at what do we need to do to make our programs better, either individually or across all the programs.
Great. Thank you.
Any other member wish to make a comment, ask a question? Member Hillis.
So on a somewhat related question, I'm curious, you cover a broad scope of programs and people and geographic region, which gets at this continuous improvement piece. And I'm curious if you could just give me a little bit at that 30,000 foot level around data management and how you're actually thinking through a data management system of how you're going to centralize that in order to have that consistent across your programs.
And that was a recommendation out of the initial report. And again, this is one of those, and again, not to beat this drum too much, but everything happens for a reason. Out of accreditation came the need for us to actually start taking, we did really well at individual program feedback and data collection, but there was no aggregation of data across the entire unit. And so we had we put a team together to start looking at that prior to even hearing about this. That was started in like May and June and some work in July. So prior to continuous improvement. So we have then, yesterday, day one of the workshop, we're talking about collecting data and how are we doing that? And thankfully, we have already kind of taken multiple steps in that direction to kind of really make sure that we're getting that kind of broader, like you said, a 30,000 foot view of what's happening across all programs. So we've built in some feedback models that are consistent in every program so that we can see it's not just about the TPs, or it's not just about what you're doing in induction or admin, but it's really across, about support for mentors, access information within the department, bigger things that go across all departments that impact people in the same way regardless. So as we collect that, it's going to give us that data across the unit, and that was one of the things that the team pointed out.
Other comments or questions? So again, this is an information/action item. No action is required at this time unless the COA wishes to take action. And so hearing none, I want to thank you, Dr. Colombini, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Laughlin, and especially for being here with us today on such a difficult day. And all our thoughts are with you and your students, your staff, and the entire community, and hope for a speedy resolution.
Did you get everybody?
We are going to begin with item 12. Is that right? Which is time certain, it says. Is the discussion of the annual report of the COA to the Commission. Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item. Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
Certainly. This is the annual report of the COA to the Commission. This is our chance to go through this document. It is presented each year at the end of November or early December, whenever this commission meeting is and it's presented to the commission by both the co-chairs of the COA. It gives the COA and commission a chance to kind of just be on the same page, making sure that the commissioners know what the COA is doing, to provide them all sorts of information about accreditation decisions, any information about trends or, high priority issues that we've been working on. So this is our chance to kind of just take our time and go through it. I want to first thank Michelle at the table. Michelle did all of the second part that has all of the decisions and all the standards findings and all of that. That's a lot of work, a lot of spreadsheets that are behind the scenes here. This is really the compilation of a lot of people's work, from, really reflecting everything that we've done from program review to common standards review, the many, many preconditions, all of that, as well as, all of the things that we've been working on to finish out the streamlining and the strengthening process that we started in 2014, to change the system to to consider outcomes a little bit more, as well as to streamline what were really onerous processes. So, and then just to present to the commissioners, what we're thinking about working on this year, and what kinds of things are important for them to know. So we can do what we want with this report. I thought maybe we could just take our time and walk through it. Unfortunately, we don't have time to bring it back to you. It is presented at the, I think it's November 21st. Is that right? 21st meeting. So, what I propose is that as you make edits or changes or want an additional section or whatever it is that you want, that you allow me to work with the co-chairs on the finalization. But if you could adopt it today with whatever edits you are proposing today. that would be helpful. So we can just start in. It has three big sections. The first part is sort of the bigger picture, doesn't really focus necessarily on the accreditation decisions, but really about, what is the system, and then, what are the big things we've worked on. We've tried to keep, on page 9, we've tried to keep the bulleted sections to kind of as just a way to document the big things that we've been working on that are part of that strengthening and streamlining. I don't know if we've captured everything. Thank you, Michelle, for coming up with this list. We dropped out the stuff that was on previous reports so that we just focus on things that we've done this year. So if anybody can think of something major that we've done this year that needs to be reflected here, that would be great. But basically, development and implementation continuing on the performance assessments, both teaching and administrative. Really working hard on the dashboards, and we'll talk about that more today in another item. Continue to work on the surveys, because that has been really important for the outcomes-based considerations. We've added a new survey this year, which we originally called General Ed, and I told Terry that's way too confusing. So we call it Other Educators, and that's the PPS and the, speech language pathology and all those other non-teaching or administrative fields. So those are fully implemented this year. The ability to close a program, which we've talked to in the past. I'm not sure that should be on the list. Yes.
So as a bulleted item, we started working on the accreditation handbook.
Okay. Right.
I know the work is not done, but I think we identified some really important areas we needed to work on, and we started working on that.
Right.
Though it's not done, I think it should be acknowledged.
Okay, great. Anybody else see them? Yes, Iris.
The thing that struck me as I read through it, which, by the way, I think is wonderful. It's a great report, and I'm always amazed to read it and how much is being done. And I think it reads very well. The thing that struck me about, it's all aligned with the areas, and that makes sense. There are things that go on every year, and then there are initiatives that go on every year. And I thought that, not for this report, don't do it this year, but maybe in the future you might consider having the initiatives in some kind of table as goals, and that these goals came from data. So it's kind of like what we are asking our institutions to do. So rather than just a list of here's all the stuff that we did, it's kind of housed in the narratives in some places where you've got what stimulated this work. We heard from such and such or whatever. But it seems like that could be a real nice, handy-dandy reference sheet for people who don't want to read the whole report to see, in addition to all the stuff that they always do, here's what they did this year, here's the goal, here's where it came from, and maybe it's a continuing goal where there are several things we don't finish in a year, but okay.
That's a great suggestion. Happy to implement that. Yeah, sure.
Well, and having served as a substitute one other time, which was presenting the report last year.
Yes, you did.
Alone.
It is in the report.
Well, I just wanted to echo what Member Riggs said, and perhaps Commissioner Rodriguez. It was so helpful to have her there too, but could elaborate on this a little more. But what I guess I didn't anticipate was the types of questions, particularly directed by the then chair, say, for example, about our use of surveys. What were we planning to do with the surveys? So something that would kind of help draw attention to those initiatives, and especially as they may be or not aligned with the Commission's own initiatives and objectives.
Okay.
So that it kind of may help answer some questions just even within the report of the types of things that were asked at the presentation. Anticipate. Yes.
That's a great idea. You're right. I mean, because they do ask those larger questions about the system. So that would be good. We could do that. And maybe, Ida, you could help me think about what might be in there. Mm-hmm. Any other suggestions for this first part? Big things. And you're right, accreditation handbook should be in here for sure.
I have a few, but I think we can talk about it in our pre-meeting. Our pre-presentation meeting.
Okay, great.
It's just typos and context questions.
So just going through the first section, I'm not going to go into detail, but just, we talk about the program sponsor alerts and our PSDE news, which are our main way of communicating officially to institutions. That was probably one of the best things we ever did was have the PSDE news and the PSA, because we had no way previously to having a history of what official, communication was out there other than that comes out from the agency at large. So it's been very helpful. We now have 2,700 people who get the PSDE news. Yes.
So when I talked about the accreditation handbook revisions as one of the bulleted points, a summary, but it is mentioned on page 16.
Okay.
Under other related activities, I believe.
Great. Yes.
But it is a significant piece of work that we've done to this point that will impact our work in the future. So I just thought that it needed to be mentioned as well.
Okay.
As a bulleted point.
Right. Absolutely. It is significant, and it dictates how we operate everything that we do. So you're right. We try to capture most of the technical assistance that we've done. We've done a lot of work on BIR training and revamping all of that. That was the first time we did that last year.
Do you ever consider putting more links in here?
Links to, sure. We could put whatever links we think are appropriate.
I don't know. Like you said, we ask our institutions to do it. I'm like, okay, when were those BIR trainings, or what does Accreditation 101 look like? I had quite a few, office hours. There was some information about that.
Erin, it looks like you have some suggestions.
I was just going to say, for some of those things, we don't have links on our website, like the BIR trainings. We don't.
Right.
Some of those things go out through the e-news, and we don't have a web page sort of calendar for them. But certainly some of those we do. Yeah.
Yeah. We could do a scan to see where a link would be helpful. I have some of that. Okay, great. Yes, Katrina.
I know this sounds like a really sort of naive question. But ultimately, how would you define the overall purpose of this report?
So I would say that many years ago, early in my career here, there was a real lack of understanding or connection between the commission and the COA. And because of that, I think there was some distrust about whether or not the COA was being hard enough. There were some accusations that it's the hen guarding the hen house, or whatever that phrase is, those kinds of things. And I think as we've had both a liaison added to the COA as that reports at every COA meeting, or a commission meeting after a COA meeting, as well as making sure that this annual report is not just a superficial look at what we've done, but a real, really trying to capture everything we've done. I think over time there's been a lot more trust built, and so I think making sure that this is a job that's delegated in EdCode to all of you to make the accreditation decisions. The commission does not do that unless it's appealed. That they feel much more comfortable, I say. And I want to open that up to Commissioner Ida Rodriguez to kind of, maybe you can comment on how you think this report helps.
I believe it helps for the same reasons that you're talking about, sort of articulating our goals with what you're doing, right? Sometimes I think that as we're making policy, it's good to see how the impact that it's having on stakeholders, and especially through the accreditation process. And so while, I'll give the accreditation reports and sometimes keep them a little a little lighter if they're, if it's just general accreditations, people moving in through the process. But as I've been learning, or sometimes people will ask me, like, how are the meetings going? Are the questions incisive, et cetera? And I think even like the last few people that have been appointed to the COA, that's sort of what I think the goal has been, to have people that are very thoughtful, right? And that's demonstrated here. And I believe that I communicate that at the meetings, people that are thoughtful about what happens, not only at the 30,000 foot level, but are able to ensure accountability within the programs. And there's one of the issues that I think has come up has been, are we coddling some of the people too much, right? And we hear all the time how people really appreciate going through the process because it helps them examine their what it is, their practice. We heard it right now, and so that's a wonderful thing. However, are they getting dinged, right? And I'm always, and the word isn't dinged, but and I'm always there to assure and ensure that you're fantastic. You're prepared. You ask the right questions to make sure that the students going through the program are receiving the best preparation. So hopefully I answered your question, but that is yes, Katrine.
Listening to you, and I appreciate the answer. I didn't know. I mean, I could imagine, but that makes a lot of sense. And I'm reminded of how useful it's been for me, as Anna alluded earlier, to have to illustrate my claims about my program with actual artifacts. So I'm just wondering what the potential utility, either now or in the future, might be of capturing a few little pictures that illustrate what you're talking about. What were the comments of the people who came before the committee? An excerpt. I always find those really interesting when I read the reports that come before us. There's a quote where a candidate said X. What's representative of that? What was a question that someone asked? And then what was the answer? And how does that illustrate an attempt to, chase the standards, for example? I think I've heard multiple times that having the new 2016 standards has really allowed people to hit reset. He said something like, it wasn't like, crack the whip or whatever the word was, but to try to raise the level of play so that, as you said, kids get the level of service that they're promised by our laws and intent. So maybe that's, I don't know if there's, you could have little video links that take people to a little snapshot of the live stream, like where was that, and these are all optional. Nobody has to click on the hyperlinks, but the hyperlinking is a great way to provide another dimension to a text that's never really been available until, now when it's commonplace.
Exactly what my point was.
Yeah, please.
I'd like to say also that this report is a really good opportunity, and it's our only opportunity, unlike some of the other divisions who bring reports to the commission a little more regularly about the work that they do and their own sort of workload. This is our once a year opportunity for PSD staff who supports the COA and the COA's activities in the majority to really get something out there in front of the commission about what all we're also involved in. So from a sort of staff, maybe a little bit selfish point of view, it's like our one big chance to kind of talk to the commission about what all we've been doing for the last year too.
I like that suggestion about maybe capturing some comments that institutions make at the table or whatever about how the process has been helpful. We can go back and see if we can capture a few from this year. That would be at least a start to help kind of bring
in light of what Erin just said too. I hear regularly, like I heard just our last speaker say, well, and in consultation with the consultant, we do this. I've talked to her a lot about that issue. Like, these are incredibly substantive, like, no illusions conversations about how to deliver quality services to kids. And that's what this organization's supposed to be. I didn't know when I arrived here if it was going to be like that. That was one of my first kind of realizations, and I go out and I go back to my hometown, and I'm like, hey, you're in California. Do you realize what we promised to kids? And then there's this whole system that's about making it real. So I don't know. I think that, that doesn't happen by accident. Helping people understand and appreciate that is a challenge, but a picture's worth 1,000 words.
That is helpful. I like that idea. And the other thing I just wanted to use the word coddling, and I think that's actually a good word because we're in between this expectation of holding people accountable and providing technical assistance and help to improve programs. So sometimes people have different perspectives about where on that line we're supposed to be. And I think showing that this is a very reasonable body that makes these decisions not lightly is really important. And that's the kind of the big message I try to get out there when I can, is that, we hold the line. You hold the line where you need to hold the line, but then giving that support to make things better is really important. But I like that idea. Mm-hmm.
And I try to convey this as much as possible, how hard Cheryl and Terry work and all of the staff, bringing agendas to the table that have this very rich discussion. And additionally, how hard the committee works, and I've noticed as time has gone on, I feel like we're very aligned, and again, so many things have changed in just the last 4 years, right? We've changed standards and we've changed streamlined the accreditation process. And, there are always bumps along the way as we grow. But, I've had the privilege of watching, this, like us become very close and being able to see how something happens here and then is manifested here. And that's very powerful. And so, thank you. We really appreciate everything that you do. And I hope that I do service to communicate to everyone how thoughtful and hardworking this group is.
So maybe I can at least look for some of those comments that over the last year that maybe we can put in here, as well as the links. If you have some ideas for links, you said that would be great. So I'm happy to do that. Erin?
Just, I don't know if we need to caveat this at all with our not new, we should have been doing this ADA requirements. And because you won't see this report again before it goes to the commission, if some of these things like video links and stuff don't go in, it may be because we found out that we can't make it ADA compliant.
That is true. Especially with webinars, because what happens with that is we have to have, and we're just making the change to all of this. This is a huge issue for us, and we're happy to do it. It's just, we have to educate ourselves on how it has to be done, but also, and thank God for people like Michelle and our younger staff that can do the technological things that us older people can't do. But
at least pictures of people.
Yeah.
Not least, because that's really, or kids. Or,
That's a great idea. Great idea. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Making it more of a living live document that really tells our story.
Right. And that's helpful because I think for the last few years, I really wanted to show, we wanted to show how much work was being done, because what was being asked of the field and of staff over the last, since the strengthening, streamlining was enormous. So it needed to come out in terms of just all of this. So that's where we're at. But so I don't know if in section 1 you have any additional comments or suggestions, any big things that jumped out at you as we're leaving something out. We know that the one area we have not made a lot of progress in is identifying exemplary programs. That's probably the area where there may have been some not super smooth alignment between the commission and the COA, because we're trying to grapple with how do you do it fairly, how do you do it consistently, that kind of thing. So we have, and it's not foundational to the work that we do. So it has not gotten very far, but the rest of the stuff we've done a lot. So everybody okay with section 1? Okay. And then section 2 is the meat and potatoes when it comes to the accreditation decisions that you make, and really trying to capture that. I see there's a couple of track changes that shouldn't be here, but other than that, this is showing the decisions that you make, and that it's not just slam dunk, everybody gets accreditation, but there are institutions that needed to be held accountable. There is, on page 29, shows that institutional follow-up. I think that's really important to show that, sometimes there's a need to follow up over more than 1 year. As with the last conversation that we had, Holy Names took more than 1 year, that you had all granted them the ability to have more time. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Again, I think all the tables you have here are really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And when people dig into it, they want to see it all there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go present
Mm-hmm.
to the commission, having graphs would be quicker,
Mm-hmm.
more quickly consumed
Okay.
by people.
I know, right? Is math in your background? Okay. Yes.
It just
Okay.
if you're again
Sure.
if you're people who don't want to read it all or
Mhm.
get to that level of detail,
Mhm.
you can get to see the institutions and
I like that.
and what percentage of them
Mhm.
had stipulations, and then when you look at the program standards also, that's the stuff that drives what kind of workshops you're going to have
That's right.
during the year.
That's right.
And so again, it's data-driven decisions that
Mhm.
you're using
Mhm.
or that you're making, and yet that doesn't quite come through unless you read all the narrative.
Mhm.
Then it comes through.
I like that. I think that thinking about the presentation like that would be more powerful than what we've done in the past. So maybe we can take that approach to the presentation.
Make me a PowerPoint with the little notes in the notes section.
Uh-huh. There we go. Yeah. Gerard.
On that, and taking up Katrine's points where you put the institution accredited with stipulations, maybe this would be a good place to put some of that stuff in this section. One of the most impressive things I see it is when an institution comes back after having a whole load of stipulations,
Mm-hmm.
and then we get to see what they've done, and as a direct result of the discussion that went on in here,
Mhm.
and so some kind of reference to that, what an example of how that worked, and today's presentation was a really good example of
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And not to cook up lots of extra projects for already super busy people, because we all know that this text representation stuff is very time consuming. But, I think of reports by, West Ed and Rand and the case study in the margin, the little case study. Even these two programs that were just here today would be like perfect for that. Like at this time, what are the numbers, before, during, after, in some graphic way, like a chart that shows, interns that met the intern eligibility requirement, year one and then 2 years later, or the number of mentor hours recorded, if there's any kind of number that could be compared over time in a little sidebar kind of case study sort of thing, I think that snapshot would be helpful in illustrating some of the stuff that Jerry's talking about.
Just one other quick comment that is unrelated to the report itself, but his comment about unit-wide assessment would be so great for the BIR training. He said it in such simplistic terms, and it's something that so many folks don't seem to get.
Right.
I loved how he said that.
The Sonoma County guy you're talking about, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll capture some of these comments.
So sort of piling on the previous amazing comments that have been made. Just for usability of the report, having, kind of capturing all that's been said into an executive summary.
Oh, okay. That's a
right
good
up
idea.
front, right? Would really just a quick snapshot, and then as they go in, they can go
Excellent.
deeper, right?
I like that. Okay. We'll add an executive summary. That's great. And then you're giving me some great ideas for the presentation, especially. That could be very powerful, I think.
And when you do that executive summary, not to get all fancy with the hyperlinks, but you can link to sections of the document just in that single paragraph.
Into this document?
Yeah, within the document.
You've been working on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got a whole website. Right.
I like it. Great. Giving some good ideas here. And you're right. I mean, the section 2 that talks about the standards that are not met gives us a good sense of where the field is struggling. I mean, we know that for the last couple of years, induction has struggled with the individuality of the program or individualizing the program. So those kinds of things as they transition or have transitioned. Yeah, that's okay.
I'll shut up after.
No, please. These are very helpful.
One of the things that struck me reading the induction part is as people struggled with the alignment IFP with district priorities or school priorities, and then thinking about what does that do as we push the administrative role in induction? What does that do to confidentiality and the security of the candidate to select authentic goals? And is that an outcome of sometimes pushing to meet a standard? Sometimes there may be unintended outcomes because we've had this confidentiality all these years. And the first thing that comes up sometimes with mentors is, well, if we're having this meeting with the administrator, anyway, you get the idea that I feel like sometimes that kind of analysis of the data too can come up with things that are surprising.
That's actually really excellent because I think we find out at accreditation meetings or discussions the unintended consequences of some policy decisions or some language that's in the standards. I know right now there was an item we had a couple of commission meetings back about field experience, and some of the changes they made to clinical practice have made other things difficult. So, and that's what we wanted to present to the commission. It's like, okay, so you made these changes, which helped in this way, but here's what we're seeing on the other side. And so does there need to be more? Yeah. Does there need to be other policy considerations there? When they added 150 hours for, if somebody's in a private school doing their clinical practice and now there's 150 hours that needs to be either aligned to, the school needs to be diverse. That reflects kind of like so it can be a private school, but it has to be diverse and it has to have the curriculum that's used in a K-12 school. Well, that now allows somebody to do all of their program in a private school. Is that what they intended? Is that not what they intended? Those kinds of things. So, I think sometimes, they make a policy decision, but not sure exactly where it ends up. So that kind of feedback loop, I think the commissioners would be very appreciative. So, yeah.
Well, and as I'm listening to everybody speak and then thinking of my impending program site visit on Monday, right? We're going to have a little conversation about the ILP when people come to my place, because I think the theme of this whole conversation, if I may offer this, I don't know if this has a role in the executive summary or not, has to do with the challenge of balancing accountability for consistent, equitable outcomes statewide with an acknowledgement of continuous growth being also a priority. So, they tug against each other. If you're not there yet, this is a lot of talk about growth mindset. This is why kids fail in math, is because we're not using a growth mindset. We got to start where they are and bring them forward. And perhaps that growth and embracing that is more important than meeting a certain standard at a certain time, right? I mean, this is constant kind of challenge. And, with the ILP, I think that programs like mine, and even in classrooms, the same tension exists. Our individual learning plan also is intended to evidence proficiency in the California standards for the teaching profession, which, as I read, is one of my charges in the standards. Now, I would assert that's a lot harder to do than coming up with an individualized plan that is entirely autonomously piloted by a second-year teacher. So, if our program gets stipulations, well, we'll be here to talk about that, because I think, and I know that that's where the feedback's going to come when the team visits my own school, but I'm also informed by the conversations that happen here, and I believe in this process. So, I would think that the just CTC in general, as the brave organization vested with ensuring that we have, ethical and, we have a commitment to ensuring that the right thing is done for all students in our state. Helping people navigate that tension, I think, is one of the charges of organizations like ours. Not just pretending it's one or the other and ignoring the fact that there is some give and take.
Right. Thank you for your comments. I think we need to push on in this section to go to section 3.
Section 3 is current work. Am I leaving
comments?
Are we leaving anything out? Yeah.
On section 3. This is an action item.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do I have a motion? Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay if
I'm fine. If
ask for a motion to accept the annual report to the COA with friendly amendments as suggested in the conversation. Motion by Riggs, second by Chakowski. Will the recording secretary call the roll call vote? Please say aye or no. Please make sure your microphones are on.
Jo Malene Bolatayo.
Aye.
Mike Hillis.
Aye.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley.
Aye.
Anna Moore.
Aye.
Jerry Morrison.
Aye.
Iris Riggs.
Aye.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Kathy Krisha.
Aye.
Cynthia Amos.
Aye.
Katrina Chakowski.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for that lively discussion. I think I'm really looking forward to presenting the report with Dr. Felly, given the, I think this is going to be fun. Should we move to 14? I'd like to go to lunch at 11:30 or 11:45, so a 15-minute. Do you think that the item 14 will do that? Of course. Okay, is the discussion of survey results from site visit teams, team leads, and institutions from 2018-19 accreditation visits. Analyst Michelle Bernardo will present this item. Ms. Bernardo, will you begin, please?
I almost forgot I was presenting this. So this item provides information on the site visit evaluation surveys that were completed this year or in 2018-19. These surveys were used to help evaluate the accreditation system, especially with the site visit process. They provided the opportunity to identify and discuss ways in which the accreditation system is working efficiently and effectively, as well as where the COA might consider the need to make any adjustments to the accreditation process. So the following surveys were completed after each of the 35 site visits in the yellow cohort. Institution survey, the team lead survey, the team member survey, and the last is a consultant survey. I'll briefly just go over the results of each of the surveys and some of the questions. I won't go through all of the questions, but some of them that were mentioned, starting with the institution survey. So the institution surveys, they allow the personnel from the institutions to offer feedback regarding the support that was provided by the commission staff leading up to the site visit, and support by the team lead during the site visit, as well as allow institutions to provide feedback about their accreditation process. For this survey, there were 36 completed responses, although there were some that did not answer all of the questions. The commission does not limit the number of personnel who may respond to the survey, but most of the responses come from the unit leadership or the accreditation coordinators. Overall, the feedback was positive. Question 4, the personnel were asked to rate how effectively the primary consultant was in each of the categories identified. 82% of the respondents rated that the consultants were either strong or excellent for the 2-month out pre-visit and the information shared prior to the visit. Some of the institutions expressed the need for more assistance on reviewing the preliminary report of findings and the review of common standards. The lowest rating on this survey was a 2.94%, was the support from the consultants at the year out pre-visit. However, because some of the questions were not answered, or it might have impacted the results for this particular question. Also, it could have been due to the turnover in institutional staff in the the year prior to the visit. Question 6. Asks to evaluate the consultant with respect to each of the following: responsiveness, objectivity, management of the team, communication of the institution, professionalism, respectfulness, and knowledge of the process. All the responses are very positive and indicate that the consultants were providing high level quality of service to the institutions during the accreditation visit. Question 9, the institutions were rating the team lead. The responses of strong and excellent range from 84.38 to 93.76%, which indicated that the institutions were well satisfied with the service that was provided. One area that was noted that could be improved upon was was identified as weak, was the communication that was shared in a fair, objective, and professional manner. Question 11, the institutions asked the institutions how they felt the 7-year accreditation cycle provides a fair and objective assessment of the institution and its programs. 96.67% of the respondents felt that the process was either moderately fair or very fair. A common strategy that was often mentioned through the survey was the helpfulness prior to the site visit and the communication that was and the constant dialogue with the faculty and staff to prioritize tasks was really helpful. And it was also recommended that the potential improvement was that the team members review all the materials prior to the visit and any changes to the materials, as well as providing some website templates to the institutions or examples of acceptable accreditation pages that they can use and reference when creating their websites. The second survey was the team lead survey. With the team lead survey, they were able to recommend team members for future site visits and also for future leadership positions. So if they wanted to become a team lead for one of the future site visits, they have identified effective strategies such as communication came up a lot in their comments, and prioritizing site visits, to go over any questions or concerns prior to the visit. Organization was also mentioned as a helpful strategy, being organized, keeping spreadsheets to help their members be focused and prepared through the site visit. The next survey was a team member survey. It allowed the team members to evaluate and communicate strategies used by the consultants, the team leads, team members, and host institutions that were both effective and ineffective. During the site visit, there were 64 respondents. 60 team members felt that they had the right size team to do a thorough job. Just a couple things that were mentioned as effective strategies or general comments about the consultant and team lead. They mentioned how the consultant asked thought-provoking questions to help the team members keep on track, strong collaboration skills, and to help seek and understand the process. Again, communication came up a lot in the strategies, and just keeping everyone focused. Some ineffective strategies that were mentioned was technology that was difficult, caused a few delays, and then just not enough prep work leading up to the site visit. So those are some ineffective. And then the last survey was the consultant survey, which was very positive as well. I mean, all of the surveys were really positive, but the consultant surveys, they were able to identify potential team leads for future visits. A majority of the consultants believed that they had just the right size teams for their visits. There was one suggestion that more practice on the writing of the reports and the BIR training would be helpful. So overall, the 4 surveys were really positive. A few things that were mentioned that could be improved upon, but so staff seeks input from the COA on these survey results, and we'll take these results and use them as a tool to improve the process for the site visits and also for the future BIR trainings and the team lead trainings as well. Any questions?
All right, Member Alvarado. Thank you, Ms. Bernardo.
Thank you. That's a very thorough sort of summary of the surveys that were conducted. As I read the document, I guess I was it was a little difficult for me because it used 3 different summary types to capture the results. In the first section, there's some questions identified and then a summary, and some have tables and then some don't have tables. And then even in the narrative, it speaks to something being as high as 98%, but it's not included in the table. So just the narrative matching a table if a table is included, and I would encourage there to be, if there's tables, to identify all the tables. And consistency just in formatting would be really helpful for me as I read it so that I can compare apples to apples. Or if you opt for the latter 2, more of a summary statement identifying strengths and weaknesses, that's okay too. But having that consistency in how the results are summarized, I think it's just easier because I'm comparing one to the other. And it may be that the survey instruments are too different to reach that conclusion. But and even in the first part where only some survey items were summarized, but there were no summaries, I just saw questions 9 or 6, and then it jumps to 11, 9, 11, and then I'm wondering what happened to 10, what happened to 8. And even if they were just stellar, it's okay to say, oh, everything was amazing in this particular question. So just more thoroughness in capturing what it was that was surveyed and what the results were in a standardized fashion. And then one final just comment, and I apologize for this, on page 6, under the heading Ineffective Strategies That Were Suggested. And you actually presented it correctly. They were identified, not suggested. They're not suggesting ineffective strategies. They identified current practices that are not that effective, right? And so just making sure that we relay the correct message. Yeah. But great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Member Riggs?
And that is also on page 5 where it says suggestions. This is in the team lead section. So what you identified is also there, where team members offered the following effective strategies. It makes it sound like the team members offered those rather than identified those as effective strategies. So, I think your suggestions, I would second those suggestions. And then this is a completely different switch. I was thinking about the surveys themselves for the institution and whether or not there's an item on it that, or if anybody else is curious about this, I'm wondering if, in addition to thinking about fairness, if an institution ever feels like, wow, they didn't realize, they didn't catch this. The team did not catch this. Is there kind of like when you're done with your review, it's like something that you think might come up and then it doesn't come up. And maybe you think it should have come up, but the team missed something.
Do you think people would actually answer that question?
Well, I think
I know.
I think they might.
I don't know.
We could ask.
They don't have to even identify what it is, but they could say, it could be worded in such a way that, is there, having gone through this process, are there some goals, or is there a goal that you've identified as an institution that doesn't come out of the accreditation team visit, but from your own analysis? Because I think that that's happened to a lot of institutions where, because we went through this process, we find our own weaknesses, and then we continue to pursue those, even though we weren't told we had to, But I don't know. It comes back to just it's such a great process, but sometimes I don't think that it can catch everything. Right? It's too big, so it just might be food for thought for us.
Follow-up question?
I was asking Cheryl, were these surveys in our report to the commission? Because this is terrific self-analysis. I couldn't remember. Is it? I know they mentioned surveys for the annual data system, but I'll have to scroll back.
Remember, I can look.
I don't think these surveys are in the commission, in the
Either, and I
annual
think
report.
this is really cool that there's some self-analysis happening in-house. So I would include that in the report.
Can I ask
Member Chukowski, and then Ms. Sullivan.
Yeah, so maybe what was just said addressed my first question, which is, are these tools available for reference by CTC? Like, could you click on and actually see the questions? And if not, well, I would think that would be handy to be able to actually see the tool. And then I think I'm putting myself in the chair of a commissioner and thinking, well, what are the constructs that this tool is designed to measure? Because just that communicates an argument about what the COA is about. And if people are willing, if the consultants are willing to seek feedback about certain things, that illustrates what matters to them as agents of this unit, right? So I would think, I would like to see actually the survey, and then I would like to see the questions coded by construct. So there's a little bit of internal consistency or validity in terms of the tool itself. I don't want to get all psychometric about it, but there's an argument communicated when you ask about certain things. Those are things that matter to you. And I think commissioners are no fools, and they're going to understand then what the philosophical and, theoretical approach of this unit is. And finally, I think it's important, given the complexity of this work, that the collaborative bidirectional nature of this relationship be communicated, because I have confidence that if and when I take issue with a finding by the site visit team, I'm going to be honored in having a site-informed perspective there, and that information will in fact influence, the future work of this unit. I think we all look at these reports and we think about what they have to say. And it's not as if this is it's not all about the consultants coming and putting down policy onto the site. So I don't think I did a very good job of explaining that. But I think one of the constructs that I'd like to see assessed in a survey, if not this one, but the future one, is to what degree is this a collaborative process that informs state policy? Because I don't know, maybe I'm a district office person who realizes that the longer I'm away from a classroom, the less in touch I am with the work of this entire entity, which is students on the ground.
Certainly have not asked that question. That's beyond what we have tried to do. I'm happy to bring the survey instruments back at your next meeting so you can see them. There are questions we leave out here because we ask confidential questions like, tell me about a team member who has had difficulty who should probably not be on a team again. So there are questions that I'm not going to put out for the world to see that, Susan Smith, had no clue what the standards were about. But I won't use that I will investigate and not use that person again if that seems to be the consensus across the board. So that's why some of the questions weren't here, but we can certainly bring them all back to you, and so you can see them and you can tweak them however you want. I'm happy to work on that.
The question could be there. I don't think I need to know about Susan Smith, but to know that you're actually asking.
Right.
Are there weaknesses in the system?
Yes.
That's important.
Yes, absolutely.
To say 7% of or 1% of consultants were identified as not having the adequate knowledge to appropriately provide support, to me, that's a reportable number. To say, and by the way, that person is, then that's a problem, right?
Perfect. We're happy to bring the instruments back. We probably haven't spent the amount of time and energy we need to really look deeply at those. We've kind of used the same ones year after year. But that's certainly work that we could do together with you all. We'll bring it back when you meet again in February. Happy to do that.
Oh, one more comment, Ms.
Well, I think it would be really helpful for us, particularly because I think there may be questions we want to ask now or reshape them because of the new accreditation system. Yes. So some of these questions, the responses seem to kind of get at it, like, is technology really messing this whole thing up because the matrices aren't working, or, something that would help us evaluate the whole streamlining and strengthening process as well.
As you think about revising it, or as this group does, having those, the BIR, how you're adjusting the BIR training to have outcomes for the team members and the team leads. It seems like that's what should generate the questions for the survey now, which goes right along with what Cheryl said about the standards, because that's what is changing the BIR training. But that is so specific to these people who are being evaluated. Right? So.
And for the sake of accountability, I would say that there should be a question about the performance of us, the COA. Though it comes, for them, we won't interact with them until the end of the whole cycle. As it's relevant, I think it would be helpful for us to know those who are on the other side, what kind of feedback they can give us.
Because right now there is not a question about the COA on there. Okay, that's helpful.
That actually, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
I like that, and I like it because I think we could go deeper on the. This process really helped us look. How we hear that all the time, and because I would really like to go deeper to find out how, or if it's just something that, they hadn't had a chance. Did the COA consultants put a mirror up to them and they had to look at it? Were they forced? Was it, like, how deep does that go? Because that's always something that's intrigued me. That goes back to the coddling a little bit too. So, yeah.
And if I could just sort of clarify that most of the comments that we get that are positive, it's after a year of support and ongoing, meaning on the initial sort of, with stipulations, usually we probably, they are not things that positively the COA, but at the end of that support period, usually we consistently hear those sorts of comments. So somehow the survey capturing that, right? Both ends of it.
Okay, one last thing. Because when I think about exemplary programs, it's not only those programs who breeze through the standards, because I'm not sure how much we learn from that, but also from those who really engage in the process of continuous improvement and may have had stipulations, and what do they do with that, So that we could probably glean some, qualitative information from both the survey as well as the reports, and come up with some of these case studies of improvement, not just excellence.
That's excellent idea, because we only do this survey after a site visit. We have not done it after an institution had major stipulations and have worked really hard. So I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. Okay, we'll start working on that again.
All right. We're done.
And you
I
will
would
see it
just,
soon.
I've had a couple of institutions personally who have asked if they could defer until after the COA presentation to complete I've had a couple say, do I have to do this right now? Because I'd really like to wait till the process ends. And for us, that means our presentation at COA. And I said, sure. I mean, take it when it means the most to you. But yeah, I mean, this is a great conversation about these surveys and what we can do with them and how we can get a little more out of them. I'm excited.
We have tried to capture a little bit about the new system, like how useful was the program review process to your understanding once you got to the site visit. We've asked a couple of those questions, but they're certainly not deep enough yet. I think we just kind of scratched the surface. So
we do ask as well questions like, what did you learn about your program, which might get a little bit of what both committee member Riggs and Chakowski were asking. I'm sorry, I always want to use your first names. So we, what did you learn? What did you learn about your program? What would you do differently next time? But we could certainly focus that language a little bit differently so that we're gleaning exactly what we want out of that. And that could provide us, by the way, with some of these anecdotal comments that we could then sort of add into our annual report about what our institution's getting out of this. So it's got great potential.
I do want to make one more comment, because in this whole process, I don't want us to glean over how great of a job our consultants are doing and how supported.
Round of applause.
That and they're not even here today because everybody's so busy. They're doing other things. But, they work with institutions a year in advance or almost a year in advance, and they work with them at least monthly. And as it gets closer, I can tell you that some of them deal with them daily. And that I know that with my recent institution, it was daily for the past month leading up to the site visit. So, they work really hard. And I love the fact that institutions are acknowledging that. So.
That being said, on that happy note, that was great. Again, lots of great suggestions. We are going to. All right, we'd like to reconvene the COA meeting Thursday, October 24th after lunch. We are going to begin the afternoon with item 13, which is the discussion of the annual accreditation data system submission process and data dashboards. Cheryl Hickey, Cheyenne Jones, and Terry Clark will introduce this item. Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
I was. I'm the donut that Aaron provided us. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, so this item is, we wanted to update you on what we've been doing on the dashboard. Cheyenne and Terry will take the majority of this, but I just wanted to let you know that this is our second year of implementation of the data system. Last year was our first year, the pilot year, to get institutions used to putting in data into the system. This is our second year, and the first year we're actually really using it in site visits to help inform the team and to provide it also to the institution in the form of dashboards, which Terry will talk about in a minute. But So far, the feedback we've gotten has been that it's very, very helpful. Like I said, we do have work to do in making sure it gets pre-populated as institutions get their information in, so that it's not as onerous for institutions. But we're really starting, I think, to finally see, to bring to fruition what the vision was for a while. So it will give us good statewide data that we've never had before, which is things like, we can tell you how many undergraduate preparation programs there are that lead to a credential. We can tell you how many postgraduate programs. We've never been able to do that level of detail. We can tell you what kind of pathways are out there. We can tell you now we have much better enrollment information, or at least in terms of a much timelier way to tell enrollment. And now we're trying to figure out how to take all that information and use it in dashboards so that it's usable for the various purposes that we need to use. So I will just, like I said, it's very early in the process. We're still tweaking things. We're still making things better. But Cheyenne, why don't I open it up to you?
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm going to briefly go over some of the ADS data that was submitted for the 2018-19 ADS reporting year. All data is self-reported by the institution through the ADS. If you look at the first table on page 1, you see the number of program sponsors for each segment and the number of program reports created for the reporting year. A total of 244 approved program sponsors submitted data, and the data shows that a total of 1,272 programs are being offered. The reports were due to the Commission by August 15, 2019, and only a few institutions needed an extension to complete the process. All reports were successfully submitted by August 21st, 2019. Now let's look at the new enrollment data shown in Table 1A, starting on page 2. The total enrollment in educator preparation for all types of Commission-approved educator preparation programs was collected by credential program and by segment. In the past, the only enrollment data the Commission ever had was the top 9 rows of the enrollment information for multiple subject, single subject, and the education specialist credential program. This was collected through Title II and was reported 2 years after the year the data was referenced. Now, this enrollment information is real-time data for the 2018-19 reporting year, submitted as the reporting year ends. There was a total of 46,110 new enrolled candidates for this reporting year. In Table 1B, you see the number of continuing candidates. Many of the educator preparation programs are longer than 1 year in length, and this table provides that data. In Table 2A, bottom of page 5, displays the number of undergraduate or postgraduate preliminary teacher preparation programs sponsored by each segment. We can see how Commission-approved programs are delivered locally through the credential program, level, and segment. An institution may offer a credential program at more than one level. Table 2B on page 6 shows data on how clinical practice is delivered in local programs. The data displays the number of institutions that offer a student teaching or intern teaching program. Within student teaching, the institution is asked to identify if the student is teaching in a co-teaching model, a residency model, or a cohort specifically designed for candidates teaching in private schools. Institutions may offer more than one model. On Table 2C on page 7 shows how the ADS also collects data on how coursework is delivered. Coursework may be delivered entirely in a face-to-face model, entirely in an online model, or a combination of the face-to-face and online models. The table shows the number of programs offered by delivery model, and an institution may offer more than one delivery model. There are also additional data tables addressing candidate gender and demographics, the minimum required and average GPA, and entry requirements related to satisfying the basic skills and subject matter in the item. Continuing on page 10, you can see some important dates for the 2019-20 ADS process. As the item states, staff will hold office hours to support institutions in completing the ADS submission. So January 7th, the ADS is open again for the academic year. Institutions will begin creating user accounts and update institutional contact information. and institutions must begin creating their program report decks. March 31st, all report decks are due and must be created. Not due, they just must be created. April 1st through August 1st, institutions must enter data in their program reports for the current academic year, completer data for the prior academic year, and submit reports to the institution's unit head. August 15th, unit head must submit all reports to the CTC. The March 31st and the August 15th dates are hard deadlines. Institutions that fail to meet the deadline will be reported as have missed the required accreditation submission for the COA. At this point, we can stop to answer questions, and then Terry continue with part 2 of the item. Is there any questions at all?
I want to acknowledge the work that Cheyenne did to get all of the institutions reporting, all that she held weekly, or I think semi-weekly, or several times a week, office hours, so people that had technical questions or had that, things that they just needed in order to get on the system and to get the information in. Really a fantastic job by Cheyenne to get everybody reporting and give them the support they needed. And great job to the institutions to really, embrace this.
I'd like to not embarrass Cheyenne, but take the opportunity to pile on that a little bit. Cheyenne just started with us last year. And she came in and learned this system, embraced the system, took on providing information to the institutions, found ways that things could be done a little better, a little differently. She's just been amazing. We're so happy to have her.
Oh, yes.
Cheyenne, first of all, thank you. I know our office benefited from your technical assistance and just the expediency of it was really appreciated. I mean, it was like almost instantaneous at sometimes. So thank you for that. Anytime we have a new process like that, it takes a team a while to understand how to use it. So my question was, when you were talking about it, you said, I think in the first chart you shared with us, you mentioned that before that, like the first 9 pieces or credentialing information was the only ones we had, and so that's pretty amazing that now that what we're able to see from this data. How do you anticipate it will change our work in terms of this new data, knowledge?
Let me answer that.
for the group.
Yeah. One of the things we're working on is, you have your basic dashboards for your institution. We actually just yesterday, we were able to see the new version for 1920. And our staff upstairs has taken a subset of some of this data, such as the number of completers you have, and they've designed new dashboards that we're going to roll out in the next month or so. So that's really exciting. So some of this ADS data would actually be available publicly also as to how some of this would be out there. So I think that will really help. The Title II data at one time collected data separately for multiple subjects, single subject ed specialist, and then the federal government changed. They lump it all in one pile. So the only data we've had until this system came into place was the 9 first things in the 2 rows in the 2 tables, 1A and 1B, lumped together in one pile. And this fall, we're going to be getting data for, I think, 17, 18. So it was always out of date. This is so much more timely. So if the legislature were to ask us something, we actually have some information to be able to share with them. So I think that's the biggest change, and we'll figure out more as we get a little more used to the fact that we have the data.
Again, I also want to appreciate, as a program sponsor, working with our credential analysts, how wonderfully supportive the commission staff has been, and you in particular, Cheyenne, because it is daunting to do Title II and then do this. And then we have to report to the Office of the President for the UC, and they all want something slightly different, and they all have slightly different definitions. So I should know this. I'm outing myself, but just thinking about, our communication, for example, with the legislature and the amount of money that's recently been spent on the residency programs and so forth. On table 2B, which is on page 6, it's clear that institutions may offer more than one model, but is this counting only unique candidates in one model, or what if there's a candidate that's in 2 models? Are they double counted? I can't remember because we actually have that situation where we have somebody who's an intern for 2 periods and then they're a student teacher for 1 period, for example.
Yeah, right now they're double counted once in each program. Yeah.
One of the things that we're working on right now is how to capture those programs that are intentionally dual credentials. So we're working with the contractor to figure out how to capture that information. Right now, we don't do it quite in the way we want to do it.
So it wasn't enough just to have this data. Now you have the second part of this agenda item, which is how are we going to use this data in the accreditation system? And this is, I have to give complete thanks to Fifi Lau and Marjorie Suko. I believe they're upstairs listening at the moment. They started this last spring. They started developing a model. They put calendar invitations on our calendars every other week from early June through August. And we met with them as they looked at how do you take the data in the ADS, in the completer surveys, and other data the commission has, and how do you put it together in one place for accreditation team members? So you have a description on pages 10 through 12, and then starting on page 13, you have some screenshots. And I know the screenshots aren't very clear. It had to do with having to take the screenshot and getting it into the PDF, but I just wanted to walk you through this. This system right here is only available, we're piloting it this year for the sites holding accreditation site visits. So I'm pretty sure that member Tchaikovsky has gotten her password to the system. Oh, she wasn't. Contact us, we'll help you get in. Because this is what it would look like, but it would have your institution. In August, we had the first of 3 team lead meetings where every team lead who's serving as a lead for your site visits came into the building and we met together for a day. We had a meeting in August, a meeting in September, and a meeting in October. At each of those, they got the login and password to their assigned institution. And for the fall visits, we also sent the login and password out to the institutions. I do know that Sac State, which I know has a visit coming up, was able to get into theirs because the dean actually demonstrated it to me at the dean's meeting, which was so cool. The goal in this system was to have one place for any information related to the institution that a team member might need for their site visit that the commission has. This is not to replace data that the institution is just providing, but it's data that we know the commission has. And a number of years ago in the 2014-2015 year when we had our strengthening and streamlining meetings, we had a lot of brainstorming going on and a lot of ideas of how could this work. And at our last team lead meeting, we actually had James Webb, who was serving as a team lead this year, and he said, I was on that design group, and we had this conversation about having one place. He said, you guys have built it. He was so excited. So let me just walk you through. The first page on page 13 is what you see is the landing page. And I've masked the institution, but across the top of the landing page, you see 5 different possibilities for a team member to click on. Those are there throughout any of the dashboards. The glossary of the data terms links out to the actual accreditation framework in case they need to check something there. It links out to the actual accreditation handbook. It links out to the page that has all the program standards. So if they need to look up some program standard for a program, and it links out to the page where all the accreditation reports are found. Because sometimes there's a accreditation report where the team lead says, I remember I was on this visit, they had a parallel situation. Why don't you look in that report for some language? So that can be so helpful. Then you'll see on this landing page, there's 3 main sections and some numbers on the right-hand side, the numbers in the boxes. The numbers that are fully able to see, they're not grayed out, are the sections of this system that's already been built and that team members are actually able to see now. And so we have 5 sections. They're described in narrative in the item. Unfortunately, when we made this a PDF, the links don't all work because I actually went to all the time to put links to every section to this page, and up in every page in the header, I put a link back to the text, but I noticed today all the links didn't work, so I apologize. On page 14, you see a dashboard that we believe team members will probably only need to go to once unless they lose contact information for the institution. This is basic information that's actually available publicly for the most part. It's the institution, what cohort they're in, what their last accreditation status was, when's their next site visit, and then you'll see where there's some gray boxes. I covered up all the contact information. That contact information is loaded from the ADS, so it has all the contact information for the institutional leadership. So when we talked with the team leads, we said, you'll probably go there once just to know it's there, but you won't be going to that section very often. In the upper left-hand corner is always the link back to main menu, and we taught them always go to the left because that takes you to the main menu. If you click on the upper right-hand corner, it exits you from the system, and you have to put in your password again, which is not fun. Page 15, you have the second section, which is all about the approved programs. Go ahead, Katrine. Microphone. Yes. Landing page, right. Yes. We'll help you today before you leave. We'll help you before you leave. So page 15, the approved program page. On a team members would go there, especially if they're in the program review part of the team. The Common Standard people won't need to go here a whole lot. And actually, if you look near the top, you see a section that says Educator Preparation Programs, and the circle is filled in. And on the right, you see Subject Matter Preparation Programs. They're not part of the accreditation process, but they're all listed there, and which programs the institution has. So this is kind of a listing of when was each program approved. It defaults to active. This actually has the full historical record of all the expired and withdrawn programs also. This is actually going to become our official record of program approval for institutions. That's all there is really in approved programs. But if you turn to page 16, you'll see the opening screen to the annual data and analysis. So what Fifi and Marjorie were able to do as they built this is they have all the information that goes into the ADS is presented here. And at this point in time, it's for the 18-19 year. As we get additional years, there'll be a feature where you can click which year you're looking at, and you can see last year and this year. There's an overview screen, which is the one here on page 16, which tells you about the institution as a whole. Tells you about Are the programs postgraduate? Are they undergraduate? Do you teach them in face-to-face, combination, or online? This institution doesn't teach any online programs, so online is not there in a bar graph at the bottom. The two boxes at the top, the left-hand side is how many commission-approved programs that institution sponsors. But on the right-hand side, you'll see although they only have 10 commission-approved programs, they submitted 15 reports. Because they submitted 2 preliminary admin reports. They do it both traditionally and intern. They submitted 2 ed specialist mild moderate, traditional student teaching and intern, 2 moderate severe, student teaching and intern, multiple subject, I think that's a 3 there. These are fuzzy, I know. And also single subject 2, student teaching and intern. So this on the right-hand side is how many actual reports did they submit about their candidates and how they're doing. Moving then to page 17, and where you can see where I am here now in data snapshots, is on the data snapshots, look across the top of the page where it said overview of program reports, and then it has data snapshots and then individual program reports. The first page we were on 16, is the overview of program reports, and then if you go to page 17, we are in the snapshots. This is more detail, and you'll see there's 3 boxes there. There are 3 different complete screens, and everything that is in ADS is on this dashboard. If you continue to 18 and then to 19, between 17, 18, and 19, you actually see all 3 of the data snapshot pages. They include enrollment, they include number of continuers, they include number of new enrollment. They go so far as to talk about completing on time on the bottom of page 18. Once you get to page 20 in our item, we're actually over to the individual program reports. And we didn't cut print all of these for you. What these do is they allow you to do a drop down, and this was selected for multiple subject. So if you're a multiple subject team member, you can go to the individual team reports and look right at the multiple subject information. We were very clear with our team leads. No standard decisions are made based on any of this data. All this data does is bring up possible questions that you might ask during the site visit. We really encourage team members to look at this data between 60 days and the site visit. Use all this information to help identify what kind of questions you'll be asking at the site visit. We don't really see them using these screens during the site visit. They've got real people to talk to. That's why we send them there. Go ahead.
So, as I sit here in this role, I know that there's been instances in which we've reviewed programs where the question of has a student started a program becomes fuzzy because they're playing with words. So, as folks are completing this, is there an operational definition as to what does it mean to start a program?
That is a really tricky conversation. And actually, I had a really fascinating conversation with one of the CSU campuses last week. There's not a firm one yet. We're working on that. All of this is helping us identify these areas that are fuzzy. So as an example, one of the CSUs was saying, we admit candidates in the fall and they finish in the spring. We also admit candidates in the spring and they finish after that next fall semester. So in reality, all of those candidates are single-year candidates for that specific program. But the way they had been entering the data, half of their candidates were showing as one-year candidates who complete, and half of their candidates were showing as continuing candidates. Well, if our goal is really to figure out if you complete in the allotted time, those should always actually all be complete on time. So we're learning some of these intricacies, and we're going to have to figure some things out and get some additional definitions. But an enter into a program is definitely another one of those areas. As you finish on I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and completing can have its own challenges. So, for example, in the programs that combine exams and coursework, like the bilingual authorization, if a student completes the program, the coursework in our bilingual authorization, but haven't yet completed one of the exams, then I guess they're not a completer, which may make it look like.
Actually, I would say they are a completer because the part of the program that is designed to be completed by coursework and whatever clinical practice there might be, they completed it.
Right. Well, that's how we've been counting them, so I'm happy to hear that. But an operational definition would help.
I think that's a really good one. Cheyenne, you're writing hopefully down operational definition of entry into the program and completer. This is a really important idea. Your completers do not necessarily one-to-one connect to the number of people you recommend for credentials. Just like in the multiple subject program, you can be a completer but not pass RECA. So completers and recommendations also differ.
Which is what our credential analysts were concerned about when I suggested we count the bilingual authorization folks as completers, but they hadn't yet been recommended. So I'm representing.
Completing and recommending is not synonymous. Completing is they completed the course of study that was laid out for them when they enrolled. So they did complete. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with these data elements, but recommendations is or is not included in this set.
Recommendations is not included in this data set. In the new version that we're working on for just the public to have, we would take recommendations from our credential system, and we actually could show the number of recommendations that an institution does in a year.
I think that would be important, and I just say this because recently in my district we were looking for math teachers. And we knew of these individuals who had done student teaching in our district, and we went in pursuit of them because we understood they were looking for jobs. But then we realized that they hadn't passed the TPA and had somehow slid out of their programs, having done their coursework and having, paid for what they needed to do. And then they were kind of on their own to complete that mission, which seems a little troubling, just because those programs, I guess, could consider those candidates as having completed.
Not with TPA. The TPA is a program requirement.
Recommended. So I don't know
Yeah.
and again, I'm thinking of the utility of this dashboard as helping us realize, is this happening on a widespread basis? And are there highly qualified potential teachers who just need a little extra support in some way?
Yeah, for the TPA, they should not be at loose ends if they haven't passed yet. Their program should still be working with them.
So that whole situation, what I have done, I do the credentialing and I'm the director of accreditation. Yes. Oh, there you go. So in that dual role, when we look at the Title II definitions of completers, as we understand it, we say if you've done everything, including the TPA, that it takes to get a credential, whether you've been recommended or not, that's what we consider a completer. So, and we've taken that same, knowing that there were still some, issues around how we're going to define with the ADS, we've taken that same definition. So you are a completer if you've completed all of the things that you need to get a credential, even if you were not recommended. That means something for us because we have a lot of out-of-state candidates online. So that's kind of where we've had to use, so we've used that Title II definition to help us. That too, you have to pass it all.
That's
I know.
Actually inaccurate for Title II.
Well,
a program completer is a person who's finished the program for multiple and ed specialist, whether or not they passed RECA. RECA is external to the program, and it's convoluted, and we clearly need to write it down. And so we're going to be working on adding to our definitions.
Yeah, because
we really will.
Everything is.
Yeah. The page 23, you actually see the link into the 5th section of this dashboard that has been built, and this is to the survey reports. And the first 4, you'll see there's a circle on the right-hand side with a dotted circle around it with a bar graph in the middle, bar chart. That actually means this institution has 4 reports in there, and the team members can click on the survey report, and all the questions that are in the completer survey are available in this. And we're actually hoping that maybe next year we aren't actually going to create survey reports in the PDF world. Every institution will get their survey report out of this system. The reason we can't do that yet is our login and process for this year is something that's an ad hoc process, and it's a little temperamental. We are working to have next year the login process be part of the ADS login in general. As Cheryl's mentioned, I think a couple times, we have some contractors working with us right now to do some enhancements to the ADS. Some things that we already had promised, such as your program contextual information will be preloaded. That was something we told you, and they were supposed to have built it the first time, but they didn't. They are building it now. It will be there. The ability to identify when you have a cohort of 28 candidates who are taking their multiple subject and their ed specialist together, and that is their program. It is a union of those 2 programs. We are working up a structure that when you pick multiple subject, you can say add another credential program. You can say ed specialist. Put them together, and the 28 people you count there are doing both programs at the same time. That's another one of the modifications. The other thing, one of the big parts they're doing, it's behind, we don't all see it, but it has to do with the security of the login. This ADS login process will be our most up-to-date, technologically appropriate login kind of anything in our building. So we're going to use this type of process for a number of other areas. So our goal is hopefully a year from now, every institution can log into their own of this set of dashboard pages through the ADS at any time. And then at a certain time each year, the new data will be uploaded. This is kind of a really quick overview of the ADS and how we're trying to start using the data. And we're actually pretty excited about it.
Member Briggs and Member Alvarado.
I'm excited about it also. I really am. The one concern I have is that the public information needs to be accurate. And so with this instance of RECA, we've got a lot of institutions who have a 100% pass rate on RECA, and we have others that are not reporting it in the same way. They're reporting it as when you're done with your program, it's inconsistent in the way it gets reported if we wait until they've passed it before we report it. And
that is accurate in some ways, but it's not actually for RECA pass rate. The RECA pass rate data comes from the commission's data. The definition.
No, go ahead and I'm talking about first pass rate.
Oh, first time pass rate. Yeah, we don't actually report any first time pass rates for institutions. That is not reported. And it's not submitted. No. Nope, there's no first time pass rate for RECA that's been submitted. The RECA pass rate information is what comes through the Title II process, where in the fall you identify all your people with their unique identifier. It goes to the testing company. The testing company puts all the exam data in. So the place that could be an error is when someone puts someone as a completer or doesn't put them in as a completer.
In Title II, it all comes from us, and that definition of completer is not consistent across the state. And so then if I withhold the people who have not passed RECA and say, oh, those aren't completers for us because they haven't passed RECA.
That's right.
And other folks are reporting those as completers.
Yep, that's
you
right.
See the unfair nature of students, potential students going and saying, well, I'm going to go where there's 100% pass rate.
True.
That's not good.
That is definitely the case, and we'll work on defining it better. And I do know also Title II reporting is changing this coming year. Marjorie and someone from Westat are both going to be at CCAC to describe that, because they are understanding that this completers versus enrolled is a problem, and they're changing that a little bit.
And what I was off task talking to Member Riggs about, in my district, this has become a bit of a crisis. We had, I represent the largest secondary district in the state, so there's a lot of people in our district, but the RECA issue and people who have been working under, I guess, intern credentials, or some alternative status, I guess they would have to be interns because that subject matter or literacy assessments required for issue of a preliminary credential, people have not passed the RECA many years into their teaching.
Yeah.
Like they've had extensions a couple different times. So what that suggests to me is that if passing the RECA is really counted as a requirement for considering someone a completer, programs would have to maintain contact with their candidates, with their students, well into the future. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years of practice. And I'm not a credentials analyst, and I'm not super hip to all the rules that are involved in extensions, but a number of these people have had to bow out of education because they haven't passed this exam. And we're scrambling within the district to provide the support to pass the RECA. I know more about the RECA than I ever thought I would, but that's not really primarily my responsibility as an induction program manager. You know what I mean?
So with regards to both TPA and RECA, I mean, if our goal is to ensure that whatever preparation programs are out there are doing right by candidates and right by districts, that districts are able to hire folks who are fully credentialed, then maybe there should be a system. This should be an element of the evaluation process to determine the quality of the program, in that if indeed a program is producing many candidates that are not able to pass RECA, that's a question about the quality of the literacy component of their program. And so then it goes back to program quality. It does matter how many enrolled and how many complete. And I don't think that any of us are in support of programs that will take anyone, and then if you don't finish, well, it's on you, meaning the candidate, when it really is on the program. So I would say that no answers now, but we do need to be thinking about how do we hold ourselves accountable to doing right by candidates? That if we admit them as fully qualified to enter a credential program, that we will work to make sure that they are able to fully apply for it. If it's their choice not to, that's different, but they would be eligible to apply for a teaching credential. And we just can't wash our hands and say, I'm so sorry, because that's not good enough. I mean, I think we have a professional responsibility for that. And building that into the evaluation process for programs, I think would be something we need to be thinking about. And I understand that assessments change over time. I get that. But as long as we have them, we need to hold ourselves to that.
And this is you know how there's the component where we talk about teaching candidates out of a program. So maybe there's a spot where we can talk about the types of supports that we put into place for candidates that have passed all their coursework and gotten the degree, but have not passed it. Because we have a person devoted to helping people pass the EdTPA. You come back to us after 5 years, we're still going to help you pass that EdTPA. So, you know, but something to that effect where we talk, that might be a spot to have that type of language or evaluative portion in it.
All right, Member Riggs?
So I just would ask that as you think about the dashboard, until there's a consistency about how the data is reported for Title II, and it's just not right in my ethics to post information about institutions where some have identified in a way that allows them to have a 100% pass rate, and others have identified in an honest way that does take accountability for, oh, we've got these people who have not passed even though they've completed our program. It's an unfair comparison until that is consistent across the state, and it really is penalizing those institutions that have had that definition. I mean, I was associate dean many years ago, and that's what I was told about the Title II data at the time by Title II people. The only measure we had that was the only thing that wasn't part of the program was RECA at the time. And we had to report when we had a not so great pass rate on that. So if you're going to put the data up there, it at least should have some kind of acknowledgement that people are defining this inconsistently across the state, and you can't use this as a measure of success of a program, I guess. It's like making a commercial that isn't accurate, right?
So I hear what you're saying. What I want to point out, though, I think for the purposes of accreditation, Title II data this is all self-reported institutional data. So I'm just saying that Title II is not in this part for accreditation. For the larger discussion, absolutely, that's an important conversation. But for this is not at the moment. But I hear you said it should be. One of the things we're doing, and I'll tell you, as we looked at the RECA pass rates for this past year, we did identify an institution that had a 55% pass rates. We had assigned one of our consultants who went down to the institution, has met with the institution, is talking through what changes they're making. So that is something that we're doing. We haven't set a threshold that says, if you don't have 80% or whatever, we haven't done that, but we did identify the lowest institution in the state and said, we need to do something about that. That's really low. So I don't know if you have anything more to add. Go ahead.
So one more thing, not related to this, but just in terms of how do we use the data. For CSU deans, within the last 6 months, we were provided data on demographics for our students in our programs, respective by campus, but in comparison to the demographics of the students being served in schools. And so what that begins to look at the discrepancy between the makeup of the teachers we're producing versus the students who are being served in schools. And it certainly raises the issue to a level of awareness that we have to be continually engaged to recruit individuals who are reflective of the students who are being served in schools to be working in the teaching profession. And even if it's not a mandated item, at least it brings it to a level of consciousness to say, hey, we have to do better. And so if that could go on there in terms of how we can use that data, it would be helpful.
Member Forbes.
Well, and among the exhibits that we prepare for the common standards, I'm doing this right now, we have to account for all those placements. And so it was really interesting to do the spreadsheet. I had a graduate student who wanted to do some research on it. And, even though program-wide, it looks really good in terms of our students are mostly all in low-income sites. They have a lot of experience with English learners, a lot of diverse groups of students. But if you look at individuals across that, maybe not every individual. So this was like one of the unintended consequences of our Mandarin program, for example, because most a lot of Mandarin immersion programs in our region are attended not by English learners, and the population of the students may not be as diverse. So, I think there's a link between what we're already producing now for the accreditation system, because we streamlined out some parts, because I seem to remember that we used to report first-time pass rates as part of the biennial report. Right? Yeah. And so, that was within an institution a useful marker. It wasn't publicly displayed in a way that would facilitate comparisons. Right? But I think those are important markers. So how can we link what we're already producing for the accreditation system with producing some important and useful pictures at the state level on some of these variables to get at who are we serving, right?
Well, especially because, I read a study recently about the whole within schools tracking or segregation of opportunity compared to across schools within larger systems. And interestingly, there's a lot more segregation the smaller you go, which I think is backed up by what Cheryl said.
I think the goal was to give you an update on the system and how it's going to be, how the data is being used, and to get your feedback. And I think we got a couple ideas of things we need to get more clarity on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your work on this. It's been, wow, a couple of years now. I remember the very first time you brought that we're going to do this dashboard and bringing in the consultants. So thank you for continuing that.
Sorry.
Member Forbes?
Can I just say one last thing about RICA? So if we see across the state that the rates of first-time pass rate or passing at all are not what they should be, doesn't that help with the conversation that the commission is having on the next agenda? Like, how valid is this assessment, and how can this data also help us improve the match between the standards and what's being taught in some of the assessments?
A very complex discussion. Lots for the commission and policymakers to think about.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to item 16. Is that correct? Wait, nope, 15, sorry. Which is the discussion of proposed changes to the Accreditation Handbook. Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item. Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
So we had hoped to have more chapters for you today. We I believe it was the June meeting. We had, I know I put it in the agenda item. We had some of the chapters, and we're bringing some more back to you today for a discussion. And frankly, because they were up so late, I know you probably haven't had time to really spend a lot of time with them. But we just, we have just ran out of time essentially. And so here, what you have in front of you is chapter 8, 11, and 14. 8, if we can get a good discussion about it. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We also have hard copies. I meant, thank you for reminding me. Yes. Okay, let's see. I'm going to put 8. I'm going to pass them out in different ways. You want to send that one? Yeah, sorry about that. Sometimes you need paper. Sometimes we try not to have paper, but you can open them on it. Oh, got it. Okay. So chapter 8 is probably the one we might want to spend the most time in, because it is the decision making, the options and implications. So we want to make sure that every word is accurate in case we're ever challenged. So we want to start there. I'll wait till the rest of everything's passed out. Eight, 11, and 14. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate that. Okay, so a couple of things just to highlight in terms of the track changes, and I'm open to taking whatever edits you want to take or add things. So 8 is the accreditation decisions, options, and implications. And one of the things that was really lacking on this first overview part on the first page was the fact that preconditions play into things here. So much in the past had talked about just the standards and forgotten that preconditions are especially serious if we find some errors. So we've added preconditions throughout this chapter. And even though, the teams, it's really staff review to begin with, but ultimately it's incorporated into the team report. So, and sometimes it's the team that just determines that there's an issue or finds that there's an issue that wasn't expected. So I also wanted to make sure that there was enough flexibility in this section to talk about where I felt like it was pinning the COA too much into a corner. I tried to make it so that it was a little bit more flexible to allow you to do the kinds of things. I don't think we needed to change the chart, but I could be wrong. I'd like us to look at that. And then I think for the most part, the middle part of the chapter looks fairly decently. On page 5, we kept referring to the closure of an individual program on the various stipulations to remind us that that is an option for a stipulation. And it kept saying may not be removed, and I just didn't feel like it was necessary. We're closing a program. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Let's see, on page 6 are a couple of examples of where I just thought it was pinning COA too much in a corner. So I tried to make it a little bit more open. Let's see. Okay, so one of the things when we get to page 9, we talk about the closing of an individual program. We had talked about, and I'd like to have a little discussion here about this. We had talked about having it at the end of the semester or quarter in which the COA decision occurs. In reality, it really depends on when the COA decision occurs. If we're keeping in mind the impact on candidates, they could be at various points in the year. So I tried to make that language a little bit more open, and maybe it's not the right language, but as soon as it is reasonably determined by the COA to do so with consideration of doing least harm to enrolled candidates. You may want to have them finish out the year. You may want them just to be done. I don't know. It's up to you guys how you want to play that out.
So, like, for example, when you're submitting something for WASC, they require you to have a teach out segment or section, right? So it's about teaching out to make sure that current students are able to do that. And if I remember correctly, part of the challenge here is that when there are situations in which a program is engaged in egregious or behavior that's absolutely harming individuals, should there be a teach out option, or should there be a plan for remediating the students, maybe involving other institutions rather than the one involved there?
Yeah,
and I'm not seeing that here, because those were the
we've done
right?
that.
And if it is there, wonderful. But I think that those were the two issues that we were discussing. When there are just serious deficiencies that can't be addressed right away, teaching out, allowing the program to phase out the students without admitting any new ones. But when there's egregious issues, being able to shut it down and requesting that other institutions be engaged to help the students complete their programs. I think that's what we discussed last, if I remember correctly.
Thanks. I would second that. One of the most difficult discussions I've been involved in here in the last few years was when we were talking about whether we should, recommend that a program be closed. And hanging over that for me always was what's going to happen to the students who are in this. And I think we definitely need some clarity on that, and we have to be absolutely clear what can happen, and what can we recommend for the students who are involved in those programs.
Member Briggs?
Yeah, so on that first bullet where it says consideration of doing least harm to enrolled candidates, I feel like it should, if we keep that language, it should also say something to the effect and also prevent harm to their future students. Or that's not a good way to say that, but going back to what you said, that it's not just enrolled students, and it really is, if you're in a program that is not really a program, not really a program that is aligned with the standards at all, then you're not being prepared for the students of California. So,
does anybody have so I guess I was thinking of both those situations when I tried to make it broad enough so you can consider it on a case by case basis, but maybe we need to be more specific about egregious and whatever words you want to use. Anyway, does anybody have any language that they'd like to share with me?
I recall that we had a snafu like this before with trying to develop some language, and you allowed people to submit them to you as people mulled over this. Maybe that would be a good thing, unless somebody knows that they've got it. But I think this is important, really important language, and I think we don't even want to get a word off.
Do I understand that I'm not going to offer any language, but the issue is not just to allow people to complete a program and then go out there into the field, but to address potential shortcomings in their experiences to date or not?
So it sounds like you're suggesting not only allow them to complete the program, but also to ensure that they meet all the requirements of the standards.
Okay.
Even if that was in their first, quarterly course or something.
So
you don't mean, let me see if I can, you don't mean complete the program, because if there's an egregious situation, you may want them immediately to move over.
Well,
so
yeah,
is that what
and it says that here, it says, to be in a different program. But I guess what I'm saying is not just moving forward, they shift over and finish what's missing, but we also look back at what they did or did not do or experience or learn while they were in this program, which has now lost its accreditation. I mean, it's almost like, go back and let's find out if the apparent standards addressed in the first part of their program actually were met.
Usually that usually happens, but maybe we need to articulate it, because if an institution is going to take over somebody else's candidates, that's what the first thing they do is like, okay, what have you gotten, and where do we need to fill the holes? But we can make it more explicit, yeah, if that helps.
If I can just add again, basically having like two options.
Okay.
And we're not talking about stipulations where they have opportunities for address. We're talking about serious
That's
issues,
right. Right.
That shouldn't happen very often. But when they do, the option of requiring every program to have a teach-out plan, right?
Which we do.
Which we
already do.
And they implement that teach-out,
Okay.
the teach-out of the program. And then the other option is basically ceasing to operate whatever it is they're doing that's clearly not aligned to the standards, and then have those clarified points of, in this instance, then another institution has to be involved to support the students, and it is the institution's responsibility to make sure that no students are falling through the cracks, that they are fully supported. So kind of breaking it up into two. If this, it's this.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's this option, then these are the steps.
Okay. And do you all believe it's okay for me to leave the timing of that to you all to determine on a case by case basis? I'm more comfortable with that, because if it's, September in the year versus if it's, March, you may have different suggestions. Yeah. Okay.
Just one other thing, maybe this is just splitting hairs, but when you just talked about like looking at candidates' experience in a program, someone said, look at what they've gotten.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would like to turn that around and think, what can these candidates demonstrate they actually have?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's going to be evident in their classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because you taught them doesn't mean they learned it, that kind of idea. I guess I'd like to see some, I don't know if it's appropriate to even include, proficiency, or especially in light of, the shift in like induction standards toward demonstrated proficiency in CSTPs, there should be some maybe assessment of candidate readiness, not just transcript analysis. You know what I mean?
I see what you mean.
It's a sticky
That's-
wicket, though. If
I was
somebody
getting
told
into the
me I'd
weeds.
passed all my coursework.
Well, right.
Unless it was like an egregious not passing, but
But then we're saying that coursework, if the institution has lost its accreditation, what value is that coursework?
Mhm.
What does it really mean?
It's a sticky wicket.
I mean, I'm talking
Yes.
down the road.
Miss
I don't know.
Member breaks and then member volatile.
Again, I don't think it's necessarily the time of the year or how far they've completed the program. I feel like the question should be if they had so many standards that were not met and their curriculum was not addressing what teachers in this state are supposed to be able to have learned. It doesn't matter if they've completed the coursework. That institution was obligated to actually engage them in a credential program. And if that institution, in an egregious way, did not do that, then this body is not obligated to say, oh, well, it's May, you've done it, so I guess we're going to have to see it through. I think it's the institution who would be held liable by the candidates to say, you let me down. You didn't give me what I thought I paid you to give me. But this institution has to come back to say, okay, is this really a credential program? When we look at it and it has all these standards that were not met, that relate to curriculum, relate to field work, relate to supervision, all of those things. So I just would like the wording to not be focused on the time or even the enrolled candidates per se, but on the meeting of the standards.
That sounds good, except we have to have a timing issue. Something has to address the timing because it'll get turned back around on us. They're gonna say, well, your document doesn't say when we have to. They will use it in a court of law, and that's what I'm worried about. So there needs to be something that says it's either your prerogative on a case-by-case basis, or and that's why I thought what we had agreed to before was too limiting for you, that you can figure it out on a case-by-case basis. But so I hear. I'm talking about so the first bullet used to say, take immediate steps to close at the end of the semester or quarter in which the decision occurs. And that you may be one day away from the end of the course, and then what are these candidates going to do tomorrow? So that it was that kind of thing. So that's why I tried to make it a little bit more open, as soon as reasonably, possible, determined by COA. I hear the other things you're saying, and those are totally legitimate and probably need to be in here somewhere. But I do feel like there needs to be something that talks about the timing. Because what we've learned in this past year is they get very literal. Institutions get very literal, and they will point to something, and their attorney will say, it doesn't say that.
Okay, so you took out the part that said the semester or the quarter. So now it seems, that there isn't a timing in it. It's just the COA doing it.
It's replaced by you determining it on a case-by-case basis. That's what I was trying to do.
I mean, I feel like that's okay.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So we're saying the same thing. Awesome.
Well, but then, I think the first bullet's fine too. I don't have any issues with that.
Okay.
I just think in terms of being concerned about timing, yes, I mean, we live in a chronologically sequenced reality, unless we're in Garcia Marquez land, which some of us are all the time. But if there is a very careful deliberation by consultants and us, et cetera, that has led to some decision to close a program, then there are standard by standard findings.
Yeah.
That's the strength of this group. Like nobody's making capricious decisions that aren't evidenced by things, in person and via evidence collected. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's far out to think that in areas where the program was found to be seriously in arrears or seriously misaligned with the standards, then either the program would have to equip the candidate with some evidence that, in fact, those standards were addressed, or the transfer plan, or there'd have to be some assurance that the program they go to is aware that those holes exist in the candidate's preparation.
Excellent suggestion. And maybe what it could be is that whatever institution they're partnering with has access to the information that COA has,
that whole
and
transfer thing functional.
Okay, perfect. I love that. Okay,
I mean, you're doing so much
That's
work
helpful.
to come to this decision anyway. It's not like a gladiator thing. It's all based on very objective criteria. So you should use that intellectual capital.
Absolutely. That's very helpful. I think we could build that in, and then it'll be up to the institutions to figure out whether, if they're making candidates retake courses or things like that, that's going to have to be between the institutions. Maybe institution A pays for it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but that's not for us to do.
Yeah, that was something that I was gonna, speak more on, and that the issue of having to ask the student to take an assessment to demonstrate their knowledge. That again, we're punishing the candidates, and what we should go after are those institutions that have taken advantage of them in the first place, and then we should no longer give them the opportunity to get more students in the future. I think that's what Iris was saying earlier, right? Because if they're already at fault here and now, they shouldn't get more students later on in the pipeline. I don't see it happening, but there were instances where we're saying, why are they still able to have more students? Because at this point, they've demonstrated they're at fault and they're not compliant. And yeah, I definitely, again, want to provide more support for those students who, at the time, didn't know that their program was like this, and they should be given more support in being able to finish their program and feel prepared to teach. Because often we lose them, and we need more of them now, more than ever. So.
Work on that. Anything else on this chapter, or are we done? Okay.
Chapter. That's me.
Some language, great. And that's a good suggestion. Just a reminder, if you want to send me language for anything or fix edits or anything, go ahead and do that. Send an email. We're happy to do that. And then chapter 11 was about BIR members. And, this wasn't in need of a lot of changes. But, this handbook was written before we started implementing the new system. So that's why we're going through and kind of really cleaning it up. But, not a lot of, nothing really was earth-shattering to me. I added some information about data and the use of the data dashboards. I thought in the chart on bottom of page 3, in terms of tasks, we had nothing related to reviewing the information against the standards, which seems to me pretty basic.
Mm-hmm. That was good.
Sure.
And, I know that we've changed the initial program review, which is on the second page there.
Okay.
It still goes to the COA for approval, and I know that many of you have expressed pleasure in the fact that it was changed and it's better than it was, because we get the form that, the feedback from the program reviewers. But by the time we get it, it may have started with all kinds of weaknesses or things that are not aligned or things that are missing. And then by the time we get it, it all says aligned. And so I honestly still feel really uncomfortable as a member of this body approving those programs. And it's a rare occasion, but it's happened to us, where a program got through the program approval process, and then later on we find some serious difficulty in that program that wasn't caught through a paper review.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that this, the improvements that have been made will prevent that. Maybe they will prevent that. It's just really hard for me to catch when I read anything that already says aligned, and that, it just, the program reviewers have said everything was accounted for. And yet we've had some serious programs that got through that process that where things weren't accounted for, and some, it slipped by the program reviewers, most likely not because it was the program reviewers, but because of the way it's a paper process and it's not caught until later. So I wish we could come up with some other phrase besides COA approves this program, because that time it seemed to come back to bite us when that happened. We are accepting the recommendation of the reviewers. And somehow the people who are submitting need to understand that the final approval is when you get reviewed with the visit. And so I thought we had talked about a term like preliminary approval or something like that, initial approval. We've talked about terms like that, but I don't know that anything has ever decided.
So this particular is sort of the Board of Institutional Reviewers' responsibilities. There's a whole chapter 3, on institutional approval and program approval. That's where we would get to the meat and bones of that. We were not able to get that on your agenda for this time, but we do know that you want to have a good conversation about initial approval, program. Thank you. That said, I believe the language in the Ed Code says you approve new programs. So however we get to a point where you feel comfortable doing that, we need to keep working on that. I don't know how to make that change because it's in Ed Code. I believe. Am I right, Terry?
I just pulled the Ed Code up. You make decisions about the initial accreditation of new programs of educator preparation in accordance with the procedures that's established by this committee. So that's what we're trying to work on now. As Miranda explained earlier, we're moving away from this narrative that could be fiction in some cases of what people write. We're moving much closer to a program review type submission where we're asking them for their draft handbook, their draft advising materials, their course syllabi. So what they actually are going to be submitting and what you will start seeing early in 2020 will be all of that. It will look a lot like what your programs look like. We also separately are having this conversation about could there be a provisional approval time frame versus a full approval. That will need regulations. It has to have regulations. We are just coming to the timeline where through the initial institutional approval process, where they now have a provisional approval time frame, and then there's a focus site visit, and then the institution gets full approval. You'll see that next summer, next June. The first focus site visit is taking place with a provisionally approved entity. So they got their institution approved in 2017. They started their program in fall of 2017. Now that they're going to have completers, it's an induction program. They have a site visit in the spring, this coming up. And so you will get a report on that. Part of the challenge is, do we have the infrastructure and the capacity to do that type of provisional and recheck with a site visit for all programs in addition to all new institutions? All new programs at new institutions are getting caught up in that process. So we've closed it for new institutions, which I think the one you're thinking recently about, somewhat egregious. It was a new institution who we kind of think didn't really understand everything about the commission's processes. We have separated new program approvals from program approvals at ongoing institutions. So we're hoping that's partly an assurance to you, but we are still talking about it. It's just a matter of how can we get it all figured out and put in place. More will come.
Let's see, on page 8 of that chapter, there is using data to help focus and formulate some interview questions, because we're really trying to get them to think about what is the data telling you, and using that to really dig in a little bit deeper, not as a decider of finding of a standard, but to really inform the questioning. Just little minor changes on the rest of that. So, any other suggestions? No. All right. right, Chapter 14 is on the evaluation of the accreditation system, and we've already had a nice discussion this morning about we will be bringing you back the surveys and have you take a look at them and maybe up the ante a little bit on those. This is a pretty short chapter, but we just wanted, I took out these questions because those aren't really the questions. So I wanted to just stay away from that and kind of talk more about what's the overall intent. And it's pretty straightforward. I think maybe we can.
I thought I heard a suggestion that people could send back individual feedback over the next couple weeks. Yep. So if we could set a deadline, such as, like November 20th or something.
Sure.
We would send a reminder out. We'd ask Michelle to do that, to send a reminder. And then that would allow us to bring these chapters back in more like final form for your next meeting.
Sounds good. November 20th, what'd you say? 20th. Okay, it's a Wednesday. Sure.
Is it in here, the annual report? Is that in here? Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's in there at all in the handbook.
I feel like the annual report is part of the evaluation of the accreditation system, and there's some accountability when it's presented to the commission.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a really good suggestion.
Does it say?
What does it say? Oh, yeah, it does. Okay, thank you. Okay. There we go. Okay. There you are. You're right. It is there.
That's why we have a bunch of eyes.
I know. It all runs together for me sometimes. Great. Okay. All right. So November 20th, we'll get any feedback that you need, and we'll send out an email reminder the week before. Sounds good. Thank you. And then we'll have more of these in at the February meeting.
Item 16, which is the discussion and possible adoption of the draft aligned matrix with the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, AAQEP, National Organization. Director Terry Clark will introduce this item. Ms. Clark, will you begin, please?
Thank you. This brings back to you the matrix that shows, beginning there on page 2, the Commission's 5 common standards and how they are addressed in the AAQEP process. We still don't have any institution that has confirmed they're interested in doing AAQEP, although we have a number that have said, we think we're interested. They're still waiting. I'm expecting in the next number of months something will actually say, yes, we are doing this, because there are a number of different institutions thinking about this. In national accreditation, the California institution still submits program review. It still submits common standards. This matrix really just helps an institution look at it to say, so if we're getting national accreditation, what is there left for California that we have to make sure we do? And if you remember back when we were in the NCATE world, some of us fondly think back to those days because there were only 4 sentences. If an institution earned NCATE accreditation, there were only 4 sentences in our common standards here in California that they also had to meet. You'll notice in the yellow underlined text, that's no longer the case. There's actually a number of places that we think we've identified that the California focus is different enough from AAQEP's focus that a California institution would have to be showing all of this. The reality is, since they're going to do program review and they're going to do program assessment, just like any institution, they're going to be showing this through those processes. They really are. But you do have the legal authority in the Ed Code to approve alignment matrices. That is one of your things the legislature has given you. So what would happen if you do act to approve this matrix, which we saw again last spring, we modified it based on your feedback. We went through it section by section and you provided some feedback. If you were to approve it, what we would do is put it on our webpage and say this is the alignment matrix that shows the alignment between AAQEP and the Commission. Any AAQEP interested, any institution interested in that, they could then look at it and decide, is it worthwhile for us? There are a number of institutions who are asking, why would we get national accreditation? And the way I always respond, the commission is very agnostic on that. If you wish to get it, that's great. We're happy to work with you. We don't care which national accreditor you want to work with. We're happy to work with any of them. But we don't in California require it. As Cheryl's mentioned earlier, there are other states. New York was a state, Georgia, Utah, Hawaii. I think Georgia may be moving away from it, where in the Ed Code it says, any educator preparation entity, although actually in one of those states, it's only the public entities, which is really peculiar. The private entities don't have to be nationally accredited, but the public do, which this is so weird for California. But there are some places where you have to be nationally accredited. This here would be an option. So it's really, we're providing a resource to interested institutions. I did send this out to every nationally accredited institution in California, and anyone that I had heard was interested in AAQEP and asked if there was feedback. There was no feedback. They seemed happy with what we had put together. So I think staff has done what it can do on this topic. I think we're recommending that if you're comfortable with the alignment matrix, to go ahead and approve it, and then it would be an alignment matrix between AAQEP and the common standards.
All right. Any comments on the matrix? Yes. Oh, I have this is an action item. I have a motion by Member Briggs, second by Chakowski. All those in, oh, no. Will the recording secretary call the roll vote? Please say aye or no. Please make sure your microphone is on.
Jomeline Belatayo.
Aye.
Mike Hillis.
Aye.
Marty Martinez.
Aye.
Cheryl Forbes.
Aye.
Bob Fraley.
Aye.
Still there.
Anna Moore.
Aye. Yeah, I'm still there.
Aye.
Jerry Morrison.
Aye.
Iris Riggs.
Aye.
Jose Luis Alvarado.
Aye.
Kathy Gracia.
Aye.
Cynthia Amos.
Aye.
Katrina Chakowski.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Congratulations. Well done. All right. That takes us to public comment. Does any member of the public have anything it wishes to say? Or Bob, do you have a joke for us?
Ha, ha, ha. Now you asked for the jokes. Where were you earlier in the day? Yeah, the main joke is I dressed up in a suit and a tie and nobody can tell. So I should have worn shorts today.
You have shorts on, right? Bermuda shorts?
Well, yeah, I've got the newscaster thing, right? Dress on the top, shorts on the bottom. No, I've got no comments. Thanks for indulging me and letting me participate this way. I appreciate it.
All right. You're welcome. Having no further business, I adjourn the October 2019 meeting of the Committee on Accreditation. The next meeting of the committee will be on February 27th and 28th in 2020. It says 2019 here. So, merry holidays.
Oh, boy.
Happy Turkey Day and New Year Day.